All right, so last night when I heard about the 55 pictures, Ms. Williams went back and called all of the jurors, all 17 of them, and asked them to not come in until 9:30, which I guess is working out well because they're also calling about the snow. So you're not going to be here till 9:30, which is good. I don't like the jury waiting while we're doing whatever we're doing. So I also believe that Ms. Smith had the opportunity to look at various pictures that were presented evidence. I looked at all the pictures last night and I compared them to your objections to Smith, but then I thought to myself, I don't have a copy of the pictures that they agree to admit, so I can't tell if things are redundant or whatever it is.
That's why I was having a hard time because I could see what they take out, but I couldn't see what else was there. But we have good news.
Yeah.
I eliminated it and we have far less objections.
Okay.
And then the prosecution is also eliminating 2 more.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to make sure I have the 2 they're eliminating. And then number 215, right?
215.
Okay, so 215's out, 247 is out.
215's out, 247.
Okay, so then I no longer have an objection to 216. So I have, I essentially have 2 very narrow sets of objections.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so
I have your list, and I looked at all the pictures and I have the list as well, so.
okay, so first, exhibits 22 and 23. I'm sorry, 220 and 221.
Okay.
I'm asking that one or the other be admitted. It makes it look like,
Let me your dust here.
Sure.
I think I know which ones you're referring to. Let me get them from you. 220 and 221. Is this in the same room?
Yes, sir.
All right.
it's the same picture, one's just focused in, one's focused out. I would just ask that one of those be struck so it doesn't appear that there are 2 of what is in those photos.
Okay, who's is this the same room? Whose room is this?
That's Ms. Crumbley's son's room.
Okay. You're gonna shoot that, or they picked a similar thing?
It's the same thing. The testimony will be clear that it's the same items in the same room. It's just to give perspective for the witness and the jury.
Okay, so what's the difference? I guess the question would be why do you even vote?
Just to show the perspective of the location of everything.
Well, here's the next slide, right? So is it this one? Sufficient? Oh, it doesn't. Maybe you can't tell me what it is.
Correct.
Yeah, that's the thing. This shows where 221 shows what it is in the room, and 220 shows what it actually is. Right? In other words, 221 shows that it's next to the shooter's bed, and 220 shows that it's whiskey. That's the reason.
I understand that. I knew that the photo from farther away, you can't tell what it is, and that's simply my objection, but I understand if the court is.
Yeah, I mean, at first I
objection.
At first I agreed with you, but I don't think that I don't think you can tell this is whiskey from a whiskey bottle from this photo. I mean, I guess you could argue it. So anyway, I'm gonna allow them both.
Thank you. There's 220 and 221.
Correct.
Okay, and then the final argument is about exhibits 242 through 244. I am asking that the whiskey bottle in those 3 photographs be redacted because the whiskey bottle is irrelevant. It's the video games were not in the Mrs. Crumbley's son's bedroom. That's from in the house in general. So the court already ruled that alcohol and whiskey bottles would not be in. So I would just ask that those whiskey bottles be redacted from those 3 photos.
I guess the ruling, I have the transcript of the ruling, was more that someone having alcohol in their house is not indicative in and of itself of gross negligence. So that was the idea.
Well, I feel like, the defense argues that it looks like there's possibly 3 different alcohol bottles. And so it's unnecessary to have 3 alcohol bottles in those photos.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm gonna ask, what's the purpose of it aside from throwing dirt at the defendant?
It's the same whiskey bottles in the defendant's room, Judge. It's clearly not 3 different bottles. You can tell from the pictures that the video games were.
This isn't in the defendant's room, is it? This is in the
No, 220 and 221.
Or the defendant's room.
Correct. It's the same.
Wait,
room.
221 is the shooter's room or the defendant's
Shooter's room.
The shooter's room.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I may have misspoke.
Okay, so then, Your Honor, if that's the same whiskey bottle, it's clear they put the whiskey
No,
bottle.
that's not what I said. It's not the same whiskey bottle, it's the same whiskey brand. The 220, 221 clearly is empty.
Okay.
242, 243, 244. That's where this bottle with alcohol in it was found. It wasn't placed there. It's just one bottle. That's where it was found.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you to redact the whiskey bottle. I don't, barring some other evidence, the only reason to admit evidence of there being alcohol in the house is to attempt to ask the jury to believe that if someone has alcohol in their house, they might be able to hear it, or that, or to connect it to the bottle in his room that they gave it to him or something, right?
So he was 15 years old at the time of the shooting. It's the same brand that was routinely purchased by the defendant and her husband over a period of weeks and months, and it's the same brand that was recovered in the art studio where they were found on December the 4th. So we do believe it's relevant, especially in light of the stated argument that defense is going to go for.
Because I'm on national television, I don't want to tell you about the things I did when I was 15 years old. But the shooter could have taken this, right?
Taken
Or
the
bought
photograph?
it. No, the whiskey. Like, the jury shouldn't be able to imply that, unless there's evidence to the contrary, that the defendant and her husband were giving the shooter whiskey.
Judge, the defense counsel has stated specifically that the defendant was, if anything, a hyper-vigilant mother. And if that's going to be the argument, then people should be entitled to explore what that means and what it doesn't mean. So these photographs were taken on November the 30th, the day of the shooting. The bottle with alcohol in it wasn't placed in the photograph. Detective Stoic will testify that that's just where it was found. He will testify that the empty whiskey bottle that is the identical brand, the one found.
Also, at the time, my client was crying, although not sobbing quite like her husband. So I think it's misleading to note that James Crumbley is sobbing, not mention anything about Jennifer Crumbley crying or sobbing, and it's just irrelevant to this transcript.
Are there any other times in the transcript when it says someone is crying? Or what's your response?
I
Is that
don't-
the only time?
There were no other times when anybody was crying.
I don't see any other references to people crying, and so that makes it even more,
Does it say it says JC sobbing, right? That could be the one.
no, it says JRC, so it's clear that it's
Can we
James
can we
Crumbley.
start JRC? Because
Judge,
you hear audio of sobbing and they can determine who's sobbing.
with the transcript, Judge, if the parties agree, it's admitted. If they don't, then it's not admitted. The reason why I sought to admit is because when I played it yesterday over the court's monitors, it's not as clear as when you just,
Yeah,
the jury's going to see it on the laptop if they want to see it again.
I
So
get it. I get what you said. But some of it was inaudible, right? So,
I don't have an objection to the transcript, but this mention about sobbing, the transcript doesn't contain other italicized portions of sobbing or crying or somebody hiccuping or anything. So this one, I'm objecting to it.
it is a sound on the audio, right? You can hear.
But it's a sound on the audio, but the prosecution's big argument is that James is sobbing and that Jennifer is not crying when she may not be as audible, but that should be a decision left to this jury, not to the transcript.
Okay, but I guess James is audibly crying though, right?
I believe that you can hear Jennifer sniffling and crying also. She's just not a big crier like he is.
All right, so what's your response?
Judge,
I do think it assists the jury, and if it's accurate, it can assist the jury, because it is hard to hear.
I believe it's inaccurate, it's misleading to say that James is sobbing and not mention that what Jennifer's doing.
Well, it's a transcript of what can be heard, right?
I can hear Jennifer Crumbley sniffling and sobbing. I can hear it not sobbing. I can hear her sniffling and I recognize it to be her. So I believe that the transcript should either reflect that or not reflect either hearing.
Mr. Keys, what's your response?
Or the jury should decide what they hear and if they hear Mrs. Crumbley.
transcript was written in November 2022. It was updated last night with the redactions. Sergeant O'Brien already testified to his impressions, his demeanor. He was there. If counsel wants to make that argument and close the argument, she's certainly free to do so. If the court has listened to the recording, it's in evidence. It's now the court can make the determination if the transcript is accurate, and if so, it'll be given to the jury. If not, then we won't introduce the transcript if there's no agreement. But we believe the transcript does fairly accurately depict what the recording showed.
It does, but what she's saying is there's an audio portion that shows he is sobbing but doesn't note that she's crying. That's the problem. So
It's counsel's interpretation that her client was crying. Sergeant Bryan was there. He said that she wasn't. And he testified
he
that
said she wasn't crying.
he said that he didn't recall her to be crying.
Did he say that?
I believe so.
I don't believe you said that.
I mean, we know Jennifer Crumbley sounds like crying. She's cried throughout the trial. This court can make the determination. And if the court doesn't believe that this transcript is accurate,
Isn't the jury supposed to make the determination?
again, the transcript is just to assist the jury because of the audio
Oh
yesterday.
yeah, I get it. I think it's helpful.
So if they look at it in the jury room deliberations, they'll have the technology provided by the court on a laptop. The audio is clear. I sought to admit it just because it appeared that it was difficult to hear all of it yesterday with the court's monitors in the circuit. But if there's no agreement, we don't even need to introduce the transcript. It was offered as an aid to the jury.
Okay.
So that's fine.
All right, what else?
I believe, so they're not gonna admit it then?
No, I guess not.
No,
Okay, thank you.
I guess you gotta determine if you want it or not. What else?
I think we're just waiting for the jury and everything. So.
I'm hopeful that that will go well. Come out as soon as they're all here, okay? So, she'll be brought down, but I wanna make sure both doors, like, because jurors are coming in both ways, so.
Your Honor, I have all the videos that are gonna be admitted. I have not reviewed any other transcripts of videos. If the prosecution intends to use or admit any transcripts, I'm just asking if I could be provided with them so that I could look at them and and if we have an issue, then I could raise it. I don't know if they intend to or not, so. yeah.
Unlikely.
I'm like, okay,
Thank you.
so we're gonna let you know, but, can you see if, yeah, because the jurors could be coming in right now. Okay, so we're gonna let you know when it's here.
Thank you.
All right. Maybe seated. Yeah, okay, take that down. I just want to make sure these are. Okay. Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Oh, remember, yes, remember. Oh, sorry. Thank you. You just marked that that was not it. Yeah, I wrote it. No, I don't think, okay, that's amazing. And then I do have one more that I want to do like that. Do you mind helping me with that? Okay. No, well, I don't know, this is fine. I don't get to know. All right, I'll see you in a minute. You look very nice. That's from Pulse. It's one of those ones I was telling you about. Okay. So this one, I'm almost, let me just finish going through. Here, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna highlight and give it to you. I've gotten to 130 on this one. They say that Amanda Holland and Jack, Lieutenant understand but I just did look at it, and then Anderson. I just reviewed everything. Okay, all right, I'm just going to do that. I don't think there are ones that are good, but like those are the good ones. I get like awesome. Like, you know, I like to bring ones with pens, but you know what I mean? You were able to, okay, do you have any questions? Okay, good. Okay. You can see what it is. So. So at the end of the day, they're for you, but I don't want to get one to jail because it's protective orders. Do you want? Do you want these or no? There's a. I want you to.
Where you can see it. They're all here.
But your witness is pulling in the conference center.
This was your 18th.
Yes. Keep him out of town.
Okay, so you don't want anything to do with it.
No.
No, you guys don't need to run over that. I'm gonna ask the jury if half an hour is not for lunch, okay? But it gets delivered right there, so.
When that's gonna happen, can you give me a heads up? Because then I can have Elaine go downstairs and grab me something, because otherwise I don't have enough time. Like yesterday, it took 25 minutes for us to get through the line to get something. I need to eat judge a meter.
I have some bagels that we just go over and take care of here.
I have to have soup because nothing goes down my esophagus.
I need soup that I made.
I can have her run down if you just give me like a little heads up.
Okay, usually the lunches for the brownies.
You know what I like? Yeah, soup. I'll write it down for you. Okay. I just need stuff to hold it down. Right?
I'm gonna check.
I'll tell you. Because she's just going to half an hour. I'll turn it on. I'll keep them all. Run back up. Sounds good? Oh, here. And you get everything on. Of course. No. Usually when it's maple syrup. Okay. Yeah. Just a cup. So it's not like a. When is it soft? Okay. Frothy. Thank you. Elena is going to get me. Okay. Yeah, they. No, but I don't.
Can I ask you a question?
So, I mean, in terms of, I do know. I used to see when I saw these things. I was like, oh my God, these people have a person. That's right. It looks like oh, those two things are coming to me. Oh my God, I forgot what they're concerned. So I have to know more about this. Okay. I'm sorry, I only rushed about this Tuesday. I had to say something. Yeah, sure. Oh my God, this is not- I need to bring it up. But I can have her parents take it because they're in town. So I can go up to Dash. Actually, I don't even know if they're in town. I'm gonna do that. I don't know. Do you know if you guys are in town? Okay, either, so. I just think it's good. Does it sound good? I'm trying to coordinate because we have to bring Jennifer clothes for the rest of the week. Dash. I ordered some tank tops and things that are coming that are longer to go under what she's wearing.
This one, I'm not positive.
The audio was not on, right?
Audio, I turned off.
Sorry.
Oh, well,
I, he had it on. So
sorry?
That was my first year.
Okay. And you're with a different school district now?
Correct.
Okay. Tell the jury, please, what exactly the Dean of Students at Oxford High School did.
So the Dean of Students is responsible for all of the student body behavior, discipline, attendance, academic intervention, behavior intervention.
Okay. So walk us through a typical day as the Dean of Students at Oxford High School, at least in the fall of 2020.
Sure. So in the fall, also we were, in 2021, we were dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. So in addition to those responsibilities, due to the health order, part of my responsibility was ensuring that everybody was masked up. So that was part of the job for Update 2 was to ensure students had access to masks, but they were also wearing them. Students were referred throughout the day from teachers based on behavior they're seeing in class, students coming down to report stuff going on in the building, conflicts they're having, conflicts they're hearing about, attendance issues where kids aren't coming to school or they're showing up late for going to class. At the time we didn't have an attendance policy coming out of COVID, so it's also part of my responsibility was to put together policy that would work in school.
Okay. So yesterday we heard from Sean Hopkins, who was a school counselor, and he said that there were 4 counselors. How many Dean of Students were there? 1. Okay. So would the responsibilities of a school counselor differ from the responsibilities of the Dean of Students?
Yes, that's correct.
How so?
So counseling, they oversee, to my understanding, they oversee college and career planning, class scheduling, mental health of the student body, planning events in relation to like extracurricular activities, the Oakland Schools Technical Campus. There's a lot of responsibilities that has no relation to the Dean's Students.
Okay. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you would be called in when there was a discipline problem in class.
Correct. That was the main function of my responsibility.
Okay. And as you said at that point, the county health department mandated masks, or is that the state order?
I believe it was Oakland County.
Okay. And so it was your responsibility to also mandate compliance with that?
Correct.
Okay. So November of 2021, all students and staff were wearing face masks?
Correct, with the exception of anyone that had a medical exemption.
Okay, thank you. Now, how long have you been in that role as of November of 2021?
That would be 4 months.
Okay. So when you started that school year?
Yes.
And where did you work before? What did you do
So
before?
prior to that, I was a long-term substitute teacher for like boarding schools. But once again, coming out of COVID, I had been laid off as a dean of students out on the west side of the state, where I was running an alternative high school program. And so I had returned to this side and was able to obtain employment as a long-term substitute teacher,
Okay.
with the idea that it would be temporary
Sure.
for that school year.
So in November of 21, how long have you been in education?
9 years.
We heard a little bit about Power School yesterday, at least through the Oxford School District. What does that mean?
So Power School is a student information system where essentially a bunch of data on students is stored and accessible for teachers, administrators, students, and parents. Everybody has a different view of that, but it's the same system. So if you're a parent, there's a parent view where you're able to see specific things to your child as a parent. For students, it's the same thing. You can see stuff for your students, which includes your grades, missing assignments, and then like my view as a part of the school staff administration would be to see all of it.
Okay.
And input information to them as well.
And as an administrator, able to input, is that what you said?
Correct.
Okay. And that came with every student in the district, would that be right?
Correct.
Now, was Jennifer Crumbley's son a student at Oxford High School in the fall of 2021?
Yes,
Prior to November of 2021, did you have any interaction with him?
I did not know.
I want to direct your attention to November the 29th, 2021. That's the day, that's a Monday, the day before the shooting. Did you receive an email regarding Jennifer Crumbley's son?
I did, yes.
I'm going to direct you to the screen that's in front of you. This was admitted yesterday as People's Exhibit 158. This is an email to you and Ms. Campine.
Correct, yes.
Okay. It was sent from whom?
From Jacqueline Davina.
And is she a staff member at Oxford High School?
Yes.
Okay. In what capacity is she?
She is an English teacher.
And go ahead, and this is already admitted, go ahead and read us the email you received.
Good morning. I had a student during first hour today, Ethan Crumbley, who was on his phone looking at different bullets at the end of first hour today as I was walking around the room passing out their essays. I didn't get a chance to investigate it a bit further since it was the end of the hour. Now that he's on my radar, I'm also noticing that some of his previous work that he's completed from earlier in the year leans a bit toward the violent side. I could bring down these things later today during my fifth hour prep if you would like them.
Okay. And this email was sent at 9:32 a.m. to both you and Ms. Fine. Please give the jury an idea of who Ms. Fine is and what her responsibilities were at that time.
So Ms. Fine is the restorative practices coordinator and anti-bullying coordinator for the district. However, her position is housed at Oxford High School, but she does work in all the buildings throughout the district. And she had previously been, before my employment, the dean of students. So the role of anti-bullying and restorative practices, her and I would often team up together to handle the behavior and discipline throughout the school.
Okay.
So that's why both of us were.
Okay.
sent this email.
So when you received this email, what did you do?
So by the time I had actually,
Well, let me ask you this question. When did, if you recall, when did you actually receive the email? When did you actually read it?
when I received the email, it was probably around 11 a.m.
Okay.
I was aware that there was an email.
And tell us what happened with this situation.
So when I was made aware of the email, it was coming from Ms. Fine, who had overheard me returning to my office from a meeting that I was in when this email was initially sent.
Your office was in the administrative section of the Acton High School?
Yes, my office was right next to hers.
Next to Ms. Fine?
Correct.
Okay.
And so we often would just like kind of yell out if we needed to talk to one another, and then one of us would walk over to the other's office.
Okay.
And so she had heard me returning to my office, and I remember her saying, "Hey, do you remember that email we got today?" And I said, "What email?" And that's when I walked over to her office and pulled it up on my phone, and she began to explain to me that she had read the email and knew that I was in the meeting, and I believe she even responded, got it to the teacher,
Okay.
and walked me through the steps she took, which was calling the student down.
Mr. Hopkins was with Ms. Fine in the meeting, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. The meeting has since ended, and so like she was just walking me through what they did.
Okay. So she updated you on what happened in the meeting?
I'm sorry. What?
She gave you an update on what happened in the meeting?
Yes,
with
correct.
Jennifer Cummings' son? Okay. After you received that information, did you determine if you had to take any steps regarding discipline?
It wasn't necessary that I did anything further. She did everything that I would have done.
All right. Did you have any additional interaction with that student at all on Monday, the 29th?
No.
Okay. Now, moving towards, did you receive any emails later on in the evening, Monday, the 29th, regarding the student? Anything at all with him?
I don't remember if I did or not.
November the 30th, Tuesday. This has already been admitted on your screen here. Is People's 160. This is an email from Ms. Morgan. And who is she and what does she do?
Miss Morgan is a math teacher at Oxford High School.
Okay. So she sent this email to you as well as Mr. Hopkins Tuesday, November 30th at 9:32 a.m.
Correct.
Okay. Up until this point in time, did you have any conversations regarding Jennifer Cummings' son?
Prior to this email?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about that.
So I was in my office Tuesday morning when Miss Morgan had walked down to the front office, just looking to share some information about a student that had drawn inappropriate things on a piece of paper. And I was the only person available to respond to that or to hear her out.
So let me ask you this. This is People 74. It's already been admitted. You said a piece of paper. Is this what you're referring to?
That is correct.
Okay. So prior to the email at 9:32 a.m., Ms. Morgan shows you this, which has been admitted as People 74
She showed me an image of that on her cell phone.
on her cell phone. Okay.
Yes.
Do you recall about what time that happened?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just know that it was during our second period of the day. However, I don't remember what time.
Okay, that's fair. Tell us about that conversation when she came and showed you this picture.
She had said she just needed to share that the student had written some inappropriate things on an assignment. And so I told her, I kind of waved her into my office since everybody else was occupied. And she had turned her phone around and showed it to me. And I had noticed the name on the top that I recognized from the day before.
Okay.
Ms. Fine had shared that information with me.
Mhm.
And my response to that was, I need to go get his counselor. And her response was, I need to get back to class.
Okay, so that was in the second hour, you think?
Correct.
Okay, so obviously it's before the email sent at 9:30.
Yes.
Now, what was your initial response in seeing this Exhibit 74?
That I needed to alert his counselor.
Why is that?
Because it seemed like he might need somebody to talk to, or we might need to figure out how we could get him some additional help.
Now, when you first looked at this drawing, what's the first thing that jumped out at you?
The statements.
Which
The
one?
blood, blood everywhere is what I noticed first. The world is dead. My life is useless. Those were the things that stood out to me.
Okay. So when you were shown this, were you thinking of a lens through discipline or through his counselor?
Counseling, 100%.
Why do you say 100%?
Because I don't notice anything on there that would rise to the level that there would be any type of student discipline.
So what happened next, please?
So she left Miss Morgan left my office, and I left my office. She went returned to her classroom, and I walked down to the counseling area to alert Mr. Hopkins.
Okay. And did you show this drawing to Mr. Hopkins?
I did not.
Okay. When you say you alerted him, what do you mean?
So when I arrived to the threshold of the doorway in his office, before I even said a word, he said to me, "Ethan Crumbley," and my response was, "Yeah, how did you know?" And so he had shared that he had received an email that morning from another teacher regarding Ethan Crumbley, and his understanding was that's why I was there, and that's when I shared with him that I had received a drawing from Miss Morgan with those statements on it.
Okay, this drawing right here, Exhibit 74?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. Now tell us what happened next, please.
His response, Mr. Hopkins' response to that was, "I'll go get him from class right now." And he stood up from his chair and walked down to the math class and correct. Ethan.
Okay, did you go with him or did you stay?
I remained in his office.
And did Mr. Hopkins bring him back to his own office?
Yes, he did.
Okay, and what did you do?
I sat in there and mostly listened to the conversation.
Okay, let me stop right there. So, just so we're clear in the chronology, Mr. Hopkins retrieved the defendant's son from class, brought him back to his office where you were waiting.
Correct.
Okay, and then was a conversation ensued between Mr. Hopkins and the defendant's son?
Yes.
Now, he testified yesterday, so without telling us what words were actually said by each other, tell us what you did and why.
I just sat there to listen for one, to be an additional adult for support. I feel it's important in my job to know that there's more than one adult in the building that cares about the students. And so it was important to me that I was there for support, but also there in case there was a reason that there was behavior that was available for this.
Okay. And during that initial conversation, did your opinion ever change to look at this as a counseling lens or a discipline lens?
No, it did not change.
Was the decision made to call that student's parents?
Yes.
Okay. And who made the decision?
Sean had made that decision.
And were you there when he made that phone call?
I was, yes.
And we have evidence to suggest it was at 9:24 and 9:27 a.m. when phone calls were made. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Were you in the office when the calls were made?
I was, yes.
Were you in the office when a portion of the phone call was on speakerphone?
I was, yes.
Tell us what you recall from that conversation.
So I recall Mr. Hopkins putting the phone on speaker so that the conversation could be had collectively. And so Sean Hopkins had introduced myself and said we were there with Ethan. And during that conversation, he had forwarded the email that we got of this assignment to his mother.
Is that the defendant, Jennifer Crumbley?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So that she could see it in real time while we were having the conversation.
Okay. Did the defendant make any statements regarding that?
I believe she said, "What were you thinking? Why did you do this?"
Okay. And that was while on the speakerphone where her son would be able to hear?
Yes.
Were you there when, well, at some point, the defendant and her husband arrived at the school?
Correct.
Okay. So in the time period that elapsed from that phone call to the time period when the defendant and her husband arrived at the school, what did you do?
So once the conversation had ended, we had already changed class periods and it was now our third hour of the day. And so his backpack was still remaining in the math class. And so it's a common protocol that our security or a hall monitor or someone will go retrieve the students' belongings if they're still waiting on a parent meeting or still having a conversation. That way it's not left when other students arrive.
Okay, so what did you do?
So I left Mr. Hopkins' office and walked down to Ms. Morgan's classroom to retrieve his backpack.
Okay, and did you give it to him?
Yes, I did.
At that point in time, with the COVID protocols in place for students using lockers,
Not at all.
okay, so every student had a backpack with them at all times?
Every student had a backpack.
Now, what was your expectation of what was to occur at the meeting with James and Jennifer Crumbley at the school?
So my understanding was that we were going to discuss what would be best to move forward next for getting him some additional help, and that would be happening that afternoon.
Okay. And then happening that afternoon, what does that mean?
That he would be leaving from the parent meeting with his parents.
Okay. Were you in the counseling office during the meeting with James and Jennifer Crumbley?
For most of it, yes.
Okay. And who led the meeting primarily?
Mr. Hopkins did.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about how that meeting progressed.
So when I arrived, Mr. and Mrs. Crumbley were already in his office, and they had already began talking about the events that led to the parent meeting, and the edited drawing.
And you said, so this is exhibit 123. So is this what you're referring to as the edited
That
drawing?
is correct, yes.
Okay.
That was on the table because Mr. Hopkins had retrieved that from the teacher when he went to get Ethan from class.
Okay.
So that was on the table and for them to view, although, like I mentioned before, Sean had emailed a copy of the original document to Mrs. Crumbley. And so they were kind of discussing what was next. And she had a pamphlet or a packet of resources that the district provides.
So who gave her that?
Sean, Mr. Hopkins.
Okay. And we say resources, what do you mean by that?
Different counseling resources available in the area. And it's like a standard packet that the school district would have on hand to provide to anybody.
Okay. Have you been involved in meetings where that sort of information has been provided to parents in the past?
Yes.
And you said it's a standard list of information? Or
It's just a
resources?
general list, yeah, of stuff in the surrounding local area.
Does that include facilities or organizations that allow same-day counseling appointments?
That I'm not sure of.
Are you familiar with Common Ground?
I am familiar with that.
And what is that organization?
So that is, they offer a couple different things. So they offer mental health resources. You can call a hotline to speak to somebody. You can even go there for like day of intake screening assessments. And that is the organization that in previous districts I've worked in that a lot of students that have been seen for mental health had went to.
Okay. And they're here in Oakland County.
Correct, yes.
All right. Now, clearly your expectation of what was to happen at the meeting was not met. Tell us about that, please.
So throughout the conversation, I had overheard his parents confirm the things that Ethan was sharing with us in his office that were kind of explaining the drawings and the words that he had written that supported him feeling sad. And so he had shared that a dog had passed away recently, a grandmother had passed away, and then one of his close friends had moved within the last month or so. And then that he was very interested in designing video games, and that had led to a argument the night before that he should be more focused on his academics rather than the video games.
Did she provide any details about that argument?
No.
Okay. Did she provide any details about how the circumstance in which when his friend moved away?
No.
I'm sorry, please continue.
And that he really struggled through the pandemic with the virtual learning, as many students did, and that they felt like he should put more focus on his academics than spending time working through the video game design.
So at any point, did you see this as anything different than your initial perception, which was the mental health issue?
No.
Okay. You said you had the backpack with you and you provided it to the student. Okay. At any point, did anybody request to search the backpack?
They did not.
And did you search the backpack yourself?
I did not. It wasn't necessary or rise to the occasion that I do that, because I didn't have any reasonable suspicion to do that. And I didn't-
Explain what that means, please.
Sure. So reasonable suspicion means that there needs to, by law, says you have to have some type of reasonable suspicious activity that would lead to searching student belongings. And so typically that's like a report that someone has a vape pen or a weapon, or that they're securing something they're not supposed to have at school, or nervous behavior when you have their belongings, which is very typical of students that we have searched in the past. They usually, their behavior will change when you're in possession of their stuff. And none of that's present at that moment.
And again, a lot of details. Well, have you ever met the defendant before, Jennifer Crumbley?
I did not.
You ever met her husband before?
I have not.
Prior to this day, you ever met her son before?
I did not know.
And was he wearing a face mask the entire time?
He was wearing a, yes, a COVID mask.
Now, was there a desire for him not to be left alone at this point?
That's what Sean had stated during the meeting when we were discussing what to do moving forward. And so his recommendation was that Ethan receive outside counseling as soon as possible today, if possible, meaning the 30th.
Mhm.
And the response to that was, we can't take him anywhere today. We have to go back to work.
And who said that?
Mrs. Crumbley said that.
The defendant?
Yes.
Okay. What was your reaction to that?
It seemed a little odd based on my experiences in previous similar parent meetings when students are being seen for mental health.
Tell us about that.
Could you tell us about
So
it?
why did it seem odd to you?
Because typically,
Your Honor, objection as to relevance, what he's experienced with other parents.
It's similar to Mr. Hopkins' testimony yesterday. We can lay foundation that he's been in these meetings before.
Go ahead.
So, sir, you've had the opportunity to be in these type of parent meetings before with mental health issues?
yes,
Okay. And could you put a number up for the jury and how many you've been a part of?
between 5 and 10 of them
Okay.
across the time of my education.
Okay. So calling in a parent for a meeting, that's not a regular thing that occurs, correct?
It is not.
Okay. So that's something that somebody has to cause the school administration to do that.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Now, you testified earlier that it was your expectation that the defendant or her husband would take the defendant's son home, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And this did not meet your expectation, but you found it to be odd. So comparing what happened November the 30th with everything in your prior experience, tell us why you felt that to be odd.
Typically, when it's recommended, the parents take their children to seek out medical assistance immediately. They follow the direction of the mental health professional, and that's been my experience every time.
In this case, that would have been Sean Hopkins.
That is correct, yes.
What was your impression of how that meeting ended on the 30th?
It sort of seemed like it ended abruptly. It was a very short meeting. I want to say it was somewhere near 10 minutes long.
Okay.
And once it was determined that they were not going to take him home, it was stated that he would end up having to walk home if he was going home and then be home by himself. And
Who said
that's- Ethan had said that.
Okay. In front of his parents?
Yes.
Did either Jennifer or James dispute that?
No, they didn't.
Okay. Please continue.
And that's when Sean had responded that he really didn't want Ethan to be home by himself alone, and that he thought it was best that if he wasn't going to leave that morning with his parents, that he remain in school so that he could be surrounded by other people, and that he would monitor his attendance and check in with him.
Okay. Nothing further.
Cross?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. In terms of your experience, I understand prior to becoming the assistant dean, you were a long-term substitute over in Lake Orion.
That is correct, yes.
And you have a degree in what?
I have a master's degree in education and human development and a bachelor's degree in sociology.
And did you ever have any training specific to disciplining students or discipline issues?
Yes, on-the-job training.
When you say you had on-the-job training, where was that?
So my job previous to being a long-term substitute teacher, I was the dean of students for an alternative program in charge of behavior and discipline. And then I spent 3 years for Brandon School District as an intervention specialist. And so I specifically dealt with student behavior.
In the trainings you did, were you taught signs of things to look for in students that would have discipline issues?
Yes, I was.
I believe you mentioned that one of those signs that you would know to look for in terms of thinking about what, if you need to search their backpack, would be whether they seem nervous when you're holding their materials, correct?
Yes.
Now, in this case, there was a time where you walked down to the classroom and retrieved Mrs. Crumbley's son's backpack.
Yes.
And you carried that backpack to the office where you were meeting with Mr. Hopkins and Mr. Crumbley's son, Mrs. Crumbley's son.
Yes.
When you carried that backpack back to Mrs. Crumbley's son, he did not appear to be nervous at all that you were holding his backpack.
He didn't appear to even care that I was holding backpack.
And so based on him not caring or showing signs of nervousness, you had no concern there was anything in that bag.
I had no reasonable suspicion the search was belonging to someone.
You did make the observation that that bag felt unusually heavy.
That is not correct.
Did you ever make the observation about how heavy the bag seemed?
I made a joke to Miss Morgan at how easily she picked it up and then handed it to me and my arm dropped. And so it was more of a joke of how strong she was compared to handing it off to me.
I see. So you had training through your employment with the Brandon School District.
Correct, yes.
You had training when you were working on your undergraduate degree.
Correct, yes.
You obviously have your advanced master's degree.
That is correct.
You have the experience from working in the school across state.
That is correct.
And you probably have attended other seminars and things to keep up to date on any recent developments in this area.
Yes.
How many additional hours would you say you've spent in those additional trainings?
I'm not sure.
Are you required to do a certain number per year?
No, I'm not.
But you do those trainings?
Yes.
Have you done more than one training?
Yes.
More than 5?
No.
So your main job or responsibility at Oxford High School was to be in charge of discipline issues with the students.
That was one of them, yes.
And when you were looking at any situation involving Mrs. Crumbley's son, there was nothing that you determined required a disciplinary action.
There was nothing that had required discipline in that situation. No.
So we talked yesterday about how Mrs. Crumbley's son was caught looking up bullets during class time.
Yes.
There was no discipline needed after he's looking up bullets in a classroom.
That doesn't reach the level where there would be a consequence.
And with respect to that issue, there was a phone call and a voicemail left for Mrs. Crumbley.
That is correct.
You were present when Ms. Fine left the message.
I was not present when she left the message.
Mr. Hopkins was present when the message was left.
I can't speak to that.
Thank you. As far as you knew, Mrs. Crumbley was not asked to come to the school regarding the bullets,
As far as I know, she wasn't. No.
and Mrs. Crumbley was not asked to call back to the school, as far as you know,
She was asked to return the phone call if she had any questions about what had occurred.
but not asked to return the phone call no matter what.
No, we often just give parents phone calls when we meet with students regardless of the issue, just to keep them informed on what we talked about, without a request to return phone call.
Now, when you were speaking with the prosecutor, you were shown exhibit number 158. I'm going to pull that up on the screen. Okay, so I've got 158 up there. And this is an email chain that went between Ms. Kubina and yourself. Is that correct? I'm sorry, I'll back up. I can see that this went between Ms. Kubina and Sean Hopkins. Were you made aware of the contents within this email that's in exhibit 158?
Yes,
And in Exhibit 158, Ms. Kubina wrote, not only was he looking up the bullets, but that when she reviewed his previous work that he's completed, it leans towards the violent side, correct?
that's what it says, correct.
Did you go and ask Ms. Kubina to provide you some of the work he completed that appeared violent?
I did not do that as it wasn't necessary.
So it was not necessary for you to specifically speak with Ms. Crumbley in any way about the bullets, drawing, or research.
It was not necessary.
And it was not necessary for you to look at what were described as violent side indications in his prior work.
It was not necessary because another staff member had already taken care of this issue. So I didn't need to get involved any further.
And you did not mention to Mrs. Crumbley at any point in time that a teacher had described prior work of her son to be on the violent side.
Can you rephrase the question?
Sure. Did you ever talk to Mrs. Crumbley that there was an indication from a teacher that her son had prior work that leaned on the violent side?
During the meeting that we had on the 30th.
You're saying you
We
discussed,
discussed that during the meeting we had on the 30th.
but at that time, you didn't even have the violent leaning materials, correct?
That is correct.
And you didn't show her any of the examples that you would say would be violent leaning materials.
Didn't have those to show her. No.
And as far as you were aware, well, I'll ask if you were aware, were you aware if anyone ever discussed violent leaning drawings or violent leaning work in the past with Mrs. Crumbley? Are you aware?
I'm not aware of that, nor was any documentation prior to this that would describe that.
Now, on November 30th, we know that you were told inappropriate things were being drawn on the math paper. Or I'm sorry, you testified that inappropriate things were drawn on the math paper, correct?
That is correct.
And when you're talking about the math paper, you're speaking about what we see in Exhibit 74 that has drawings and writings by Mrs. Crumbley's son on the paper.
That is correct.
You're aware that Mrs. Crumbley's son was drawing these things and writing these words during class time when he was supposed to be working on this review, correct?
Yep.
And that did not create a discipline issue
Well,
to you?
when he's seen for mental health, that supersedes any type of minor violation that this would potentially rise to, but this doesn't violate any of the code of our conduct. So there wouldn't be discipline. And as I mentioned, because of the fact that he was being seen by his counselor for mental health, that's what takes precedence in the situation.
That was explained to Mrs. Crumbley. This is not a discipline issue. Your son is not in trouble for this drawing, correct?
Yes,
And you explained to Mrs. Crumbley, we're concerned about mental health, not disciplining him for this drawing.
yes,
And during that meeting, it was a conclusion by you that this was not, with you and Mr. Hopkins together, that this was not a discipline issue, but a mental health issue.
so I was there for discipline behavior, so that question was posed to me to make that call as part of my job.
And what was the call you
The
made?
call that I made was that there's no discipline warranted, that I'm more concerned that he gets the help that he needs.
During that meeting, were you aware that another teacher had reported Mrs. Crumbley's son was looking at a violent video in class?
Yes, that is why Sean thought that I had come to his office that morning. So he had shared that he had gotten an email from the other teacher.
Did you ask to see the violent video that Mrs. Crumbley's son had been watching while he was in class?
I did not ask to see that, as it wasn't necessary.
You found it to not be necessary to take a look at the video that he had been watching?
No.
You didn't even ask Mrs. Crumbley's son, hey, can I see it? Take a look at that video.
Well, since it was described as not like a live event, and due to the fact that most teenagers are watching violent movies, video games, pre-recorded on YouTube, it doesn't rise to the occasion where you would be concerned.
And it also didn't rise to the occasion that you felt he should be disciplined for watching a video during class time.
That also wouldn't rise to the occasion of a violation of conduct. That would be more of a teacher managed behavior. You would never be suspended for that, or voting rights to education.
I went to school in a different day and age where you had to do school during school. So it sounds to me like during school, Oxford High School allows more freedom than what I experienced. So it was okay that he was looking at the bullets. That's not a discipline issue.
It's not that it was okay, it just doesn't rise to the occasion that you receive a suspension as a consequence. We have to rely on restorative practices instead of going right to suspension, as you mentioned that you experienced when you were in school. And we have to consider how the students' behavior interferes with the day and discuss that with them and talk about how we can move forward. And that has to be considered for all minor violations before you would ever consider suspension. And that's something that we have to do by law.
So, but when you're considering all of these things, you're ultimately concluding they're minor violations if they're violations at all, correct?
That is correct.
But looking at bullets in the classroom,
Yes.
looking at violent video on his phone,
Yes.
the drawings on this math paper,
Yes.
the drawings on the amended math paper where Mrs. Crumbley's son made other marks on the page.
So the drawings at the moment were not as important as a standout as the statements were. So when you have the explanation of the desire to design video games, and that's how he was practicing the drawing, and you have the parents confirm that information, it lowers the level of concern immensely.
So you took into account the context of what you were understanding, and that was part of what helped you conclude this was not a disciplinary issue.
That is correct.
Now, in terms of any disciplinary issues with Mrs. Crumbley's son prior, would those show up on Power Schools?
They would, yes.
It's fair to say that when you look at Power Schools, you don't see any history of disciplinary action against Mrs. Crumbley's son.
There was no history of discipline for Mrs. Crumbley's son.
All of his grades are available to be seen. Mrs. Crumbley's son, while he may not have had the best grades, had overall passing grades. Is that fair to say?
Pretty average for a student at the time, yes.
And when you're on Power Schools, you can also see attendance records and be able to tell if the student was in school often or missed school often, correct?
Yes.
And it appears from Power Schools that Mrs. Crumbley's son had very regular, very good attendance.
He did have regular attendance, yes.
So when you are looking at Mrs. Crumbley's son, it's fair to say he comes to you with no history that would cause you to be on higher alert.
That is correct.
And when I asked about prior incidents of discipline or things along those lines, you did not see anything from the 2020 to 2021 school year documented regarding discipline.
No, we would be able to see anything that would be in the history of attending option schools, and there wasn't anything.
When you heard the phone call to Mrs. Crumbley where she was asked, or it was suggested that a parent come to the school, her immediate reaction, you wanted to see her immediate reaction to seeing the paper for math class, correct?
Can you rephrase that question, please?
Sure, and I apologize. You testified that you wanted her immediate reaction when she saw the math paper you were dealing with, correct?
I wasn't looking for her immediate reaction. It was more, we're going to send you this that he just threw, so you have it in front of you.
But you did end up getting her immediate reaction because
Yes.
she was on the phone at the time,
Yes,
on speakerphone.
yes,
And you testified that her first reaction was to ask her son, what were you thinking? Why did you do this?
yes.
When you call parents and say, I need a parent to come up here for a meeting, oftentimes one parent or the other comes to the school.
That's not necessarily true.
Well, there are times where both parents come to the school together.
Yes,
There are also times where one parent or the other parent come to the school.
fair statement.
And when you're asking for a parent to come to the school, you are not specifically saying it has to be mom, or it has to be dad, or it has to be both, correct?
It just has to be whoever's legally allowed to, yes.
And in this case, legally allowed to would be both mom and dad, Mr. Crumbley and Mrs. Crumbley.
Yes,
So according to your request for a parent to come to the school, it's perfectly okay if it would be Mrs. Crumbley who comes, Mr. Crumbley who comes, or both parents.
yes,
In this circumstance, both parents came to the school.
Correct.
And they both attended the meeting that lasted approximately 10 minutes, as you said. Now, this was the first time that you ever had the Crumbley parents come to the school regarding their son, correct?
That I was involved in? Yes.
And that you're aware of.
That, yes.
You would have seen on Power Schools if Mrs. Crumbley had been up at the school many times the year before, or the year before that, or the year before that, correct?
It depending on the type of meeting, potentially. If they're meeting with the teacher, it probably wouldn't be listed in Power School.
So discipline meetings would have been on there, and you didn't see any history of Mrs. Crumbley coming to the school for discipline.
That's correct.
So she was a person that when she arrived, you did not know from prior occasions with, you had not had many communications or any communications with Mrs. Crumbley where you would know who she is or how she is.
That's correct.
During the meeting, Mr. Hopkins supplied Mr. Crumbley and Mrs. Crumbley with the sheet of resources, including many therapists listed.
That's correct.
And on that sheet, there's also Common Ground is listed in some other mental health facilities.
I can't speak to what's included on this.
During that meeting, you indicated to Mr. and Mrs. Crumbley that you wanted them to get counseling for their son.
I did not indicate that, no.
Mr. Hopkins did,
Yes,
but you agreed with that.
I do.
And when that happened, there was not any specific direction, you need to go to Common Ground.
No, the direction was as soon as possible, that day if possible.
As soon as possible, that day is possible, if possible, but it's okay if it was going to end up being on a different day.
I can't speak to that. I can speak to the statement that was made that Mr. Hopkins would be following up within 48 hours to ensure that they had made arrangements for that, which means they had 48 hours to secure some type of counseling.
And by secure some type of counseling, you mean scheduling an appointment, making steps to get mental health counseling, correct?
Correct, after they said they were not going to be taking their son out that day.
Now, during the meeting, well, as the Dean of Students, you're aware that there are some circumstances where children or students at Oxford High are not permitted to stay at school, correct?
There are situations where students wouldn't be permitted to stay at school, yes.
If a student comes to school and is positive for COVID, you would not allow the student to stay there.
That's a fair statement, yes.
If a student has a temperature and is sick, you would not allow the student to stay there.
We would request that they were picked up.
And if the parent said, no, I'm not going to get them, they're fine, the school would still say, no, you have to take them home, correct?
We've said that in the past and it still hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened where a parent hasn't taken the child home. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is, in that specific case where students have had a fever and parents refuse to come pick them up, they remain at school. I've been in situations where parents were refusing to come pick them up.
So you end up letting parents, so there are times then where you want the child picked up, but they don't get picked up, and the school doesn't do anything about it to force the parents to come.
There's nothing that we have the power to do to force parents to do anything.
If you said, if there was a discipline issue, if you had looked at this as a discipline issue and told a parent, your child cannot stay here because of this discipline issue, you do have the authority to say, you must take your child home, correct?
I have the authority to recommend that. However, I can't force them to do that. If it doesn't reach to a level where there's any type of illegal behavior, I wouldn't be able to do anything further than recommend that they get up there because the child cannot remain at school. But I can't force them to do anything.
Okay, but in this circumstance, in this particular circumstance, there was discussion where ultimately it was okay in your mind for Mrs. Crumbley's son to remain in school.
From a discipline standpoint, yes. There wasn't a reason to suspend him. There was no violation of our code of conduct that reaches the level of suspension.
And if you thought Mrs. Crumbley or Mr. Crumbley were neglecting their son medically, you are mandated by law to report that, correct?
Yep, absolutely.
So it's fair to say that even looking at it from a counseling mental health perspective, you did not find that Mr. Crumbley and Mrs. Crumbley were meeting a level of being so neglectful that you needed to call to report that, correct?
No, because I wasn't made aware of all the additional information that they were withholding.
It's important for you to have all the information you can, correct?
Sure. I
You
can't
would-
force people to share information.
You would also agree that the school had information they didn't share with Mrs. Crumbley.
We had shared all the information we had with her at the time of the parent meeting.
You would agree with me that there has been claims of prior disciplinary issues that from your documentation in Power Schools is not even included, correct?
I wouldn't agree with that. No.
I'm sorry, did I misunderstand? Is those prior discipline issues are on there?
There weren't any prior discipline issues.
Right, so there's no prior discipline issues listed on there. You testified you never spoke with Mrs. Crumbley about discipline issues.
Yeah, that's correct.
So you don't have any evidence that Ms. Crumbley received all the information that the school would or could have known.
Can you rephrase that question?
You don't know that Mrs. Crumbley had received information about every specific situation with her son, correct?
The specific information discussed in emails that was shared with Mrs. Crumbley.
Right, so on that day, you're discussing with her limited information compared to the whole picture.
It was the information that we had at the time. All the information we had was shared with her.
Are you saying that when making you share the emails with her too?
So the emails that we received from the teachers, correct?
Oh, okay.
At no point in time did you believe that Mrs. Crumbley's son posed a threat to the school.
He did not pose a threat to the school.
If he posed a threat to the school, that's something that you have been trained in to identify, correct?
Correct. We had previous threats that year that I handled completely different based on the fact that
They were
we
threats.
received threat, correct.
And when something is a threat, how is it that you handle it differently? Is the student allowed to stay in school? So you are the decision maker about whether or not there is a threat overall.
I wouldn't say that I'm the decision maker, but I have the power to heighten it to the level where we can get other people involved that can make a more informed decision.
And you're the one that has the training on that topic.
I'm one of them, yes.
And in this case, your conclusion was that the shooter's son was not a threat.
There was no threat present at the time.
You also took into account that what Mrs. Crumbley's son said made it sound like there were issues of sadness versus anything threatening, correct?
Correct, which is very typical of most teenagers.
Very typical.
Very typical of most teenagers, especially at that time with COVID, to feel sad. It was not unusual to hear that throughout the day.
Now, some of the statements on the math paper, you saw the statements that say things like, I love my life so much, and OHS, which I assume stands for Oxford High School, rocks, correct?
Yes.
Those kind of statements also, would you agree those are mixed signal kind of statements?
No, I would say it looks like you have a teenager who is trying to not get in trouble, knowing that the dean of students is involved most of the time. When I'm involved in student meetings, the kids always think they're in trouble, which is not necessarily always the case. So I look at that as he was trying to get himself out of being in trouble.
And you,
Thinking he was going to be in trouble from this meeting.
and that was something that's not unusual for you to see.
That's not unusual.
That doesn't mean there's a threat to you.
That doesn't mean there's a threat.
In terms of Oxford and the area community, you're familiar with the fact that students at the school, there are many who are interested in hunting, guns, targeted practice, that kind of thing, correct?
Yes, during hunting season, it's kind of like a reminder that sort of gets put out for students that go hunting in the mornings before the late start Wednesdays to remember to not come to school in their gear and or have weapons in their vehicles from that morning. And like we've also had students that pose with guns for their homecoming pictures as well. So it's very common in the Oxford community.
Okay, so it's so common that there are students, they pose for homecoming
There are
pictures.
students that will pose with guns for their homecoming photos.
When you're talking about homecoming photos, you're talking about like the dance.
They're dressed up at home and taking photos, correct?
So they're dressed up in their, little party dresses, and they're holding guns in the photographs before they go to the dance.
Yes.
And you're saying that there are students who go hunting in the mornings before even coming to school?
Yes. So at the time, we had late start Wednesdays, so school didn't start till 10, 20-ish. So when hunting season would start, they potentially could be out hunting with their parents in the morning.
So in addition to what you did know in this case, seeing a gun or talks of a gun, that was not something that caused alarm to make you think there was some kind of threat.
Nor
Guns-
was I aware that he even had a gun.
Guns at that school are very common. It sounds like it's a common topic if they're in pictures of homecoming dresses and things like that.
I would say across many schools, it wouldn't be uncommon to see guns drawn on assignments or papers. Oftentimes, there are some books or part of the curriculum, and students end up drawing guns to represent stuff in the stories.
Now, my understanding is that you guys recommended immediate care. I'm sorry, I'm just writing that. I was going into a question I've already asked you. You did not think it was strange that the parents were not taking their son out of school, specifically with Mrs. Crumbley's son on November 30th, correct?
I did think it was strange that they didn't take this on.
You've testified before in civil cases regarding what happened at Oxford High School, correct?
I have, yes.
And specifically on September 14th of 2022, you testified in a deposition, correct?
That sounds about right, yes.
And when you testify in a deposition, it's not like a courtroom like this, right?
No, it's not.
But you still have to swear to tell the truth and take an oath before you testify.
Correct.
On that day, you were specifically asked, so that not taking Ethan home that day, you did not find that to be strange and out of the ordinary. Your answer was no. There would have been no reason for him to go home.
That was in regards to student discipline. So the context, I believe, is important there.
That's in regard to student discipline.
Correct.
But that was the question you were asked that day and the answer you gave.
In regards to being disciplined or suspended, correct?
And in terms of a mental health consideration, it was not something that arose to the level, whereas a mandatory reporter, you would have to report the Crumbleys for being neglectful. We've already established that, correct?
Yes.
In the meeting you had, there was no indication, and there's nothing in Mrs. Crumbley's son's record to show there had ever been a previous concern about the need for mental health to Mr. Crumbley.
I think we've already answered this question.
Yes, sorry.
No, I asked about prior discipline, but I didn't ask about prior notations mental health was necessary.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
From a school standpoint, we did not have any record of mental health.
Now, when you testified previously, you testified that Mrs. Crumbley seemed receptive and willing to get mental health treatment for her son.
That was my understanding. At the end of that meeting, yes.
Although maybe not that day, it was your understanding she was on board and was going to make an appointment or do something within 48 hours.
That was my understanding.
when you were in the meeting and the struggle was discussed, ongoing struggle between the Crumbleys and their son, would you agree with me that the parents were making statements about they were concerned with their son's schoolwork and grades?
They just confirmed that they had an argument. They didn't provide any context or details about anything other than what he had shared with us before they arrived.
Were you aware there was a specific concern related to Mrs. Crumbley's son having missing assignments specifically?
The only information that she provided was that he struggled with virtual learning, which was confirming what he had also shared with us. But there was nothing specific that I remember her sharing.
And you would agree with me that when you meet with parents, parents all react differently to their child being brought down to the office.
That depends on the situation.
So depending on the situation, parents may have a variety of reactions.
It depends on what the meeting is, yeah. What the meeting is about, why we're meeting with the parents and the child.
Obviously, when parents come to the school, they're showing you a level of concern to make sure to handle whatever it is going on, correct?
Somewhat.
And you're aware that when the parents are coming to a meeting, they are going to be getting information and from you and from other professionals at the school.
As well as providing information that they have, because they're the experts on the child. So part of the meeting is to share what we have, but also to listen to confirmation or additional details about stuff that they might be seeing outside of school at home. And that information is not provided.
There was no information provided to you that the Crumbleys had concerns over mental health issues. Fair to say?
That's fair to say.
And nothing further.
Thank you. Mr. Ejak, let's talk about the whole picture. Okay, so you testified that as dean of students, you needed reasonable suspicion to search these students' personal items such as a backpack.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And on November 30th, 2021, it was your perception with the information you were given that you didn't possess reasonable suspicion.
That's correct.
And you also had a perception with the information you were given on November 30th, 2021, that the defendant's son wasn't a threat to anyone else.
That's correct.
Okay. So you had told us that Jennifer Crumbley just confirmed some items that her son had told you prior to her arrival.
Yes.
Did she ever tell you that in March of 2021 and April of 2021 that her son was hallucinating, or at least expressing that he was hallucinating?
No, she did not.
Okay. Did she ever tell you in April of 2021 that she had told her friend that she thought her son was depressed?
No, she did not.
Did she ever tell you that as early as June of 2021, she had indicated that he had obtained his own firearm?
No, she did not.
Okay, now one of the reasons you told us about reasonable suspicion, you said if you believe the student has a weapon or access to a weapon. Is that important to you as dean of students?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. If you had information that a student had access to a firearm in conjunction with that photograph that you saw in Exhibit 74, what would that indicate to you?
That would indicate that I need to heighten it to the next level and involve our school resource officer as well as administration.
Okay. And did Jennifer Crumbley ever tell you that she had given her son a 6-hour 9mm handgun just 4 days before this drawing was created?
She did not know.
Would that have been important to you?
Absolutely, yes.
Would that have helped complete the full picture?
It would have, and it would have completely changed the process that we followed.
Now you talk about decision makers. Between parent and child, who's the decision maker?
The parent.
Okay. And decision makers as to if a student stays in school or not. Who's the decision maker? Parent or administrator?
I would object because in this case, there has been discussion and testimony that the student was a part of the decision and so were the parents. And so I would say that the opinion on this question is irrelevant.
Part of the decision.
I take it the objection is on MRE 401 relevance. In response, counsel on her cross-examination specifically asked him about the decision maker, he being the decision maker, and I believe this.
Yeah, I'm gonna allow it.
Thank you. Okay, so between you, Mr. Hopkins, Jennifer, and James Crumbley, who were the decision makers?
So I would say the main decision maker would have been the parents.
The parent. And you've never seen the defendant's son.
Your Honor, I would ask that the prosecution stop asking leading questions.
That's fine. Okay. If you were given the full picture, what would it have taken for you to heighten that to reasonable suspicion to search a backpack?
Any type of indicator that the student is going to be a threat to anybody, including himself, that would heighten it to the next level.
And when you have a
indicator that there was access to a firearm, or that he had made comments about wanting to hurt anybody, any statements written on there with names, or I'm going to do this, I'm doing like those would all have been things that would have changed the process that we followed.
And when you have a meeting with a parent and a student, do you rely upon the parent to provide information?
Absolutely. As an expert of their child, heavily rely on the parent for information.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may I ask one question
Sure.
and redirect? You also, so you're from a community where guns are popular, you testified about that. You also didn't ask if the Crumbleys had a gun, correct?
I did not ask
You're aware many of the families in Oxford have guns, but you did not ask them specifically if they had one, and they didn't tell you.
I didn't ask that question.
Thank you.
No, Judge, thank you.
You can step down and your seat. Who's the next one?
Andy Smith?
He's in the hallway there.
Wait, sir.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, so help you?
Yes.
All right, you may be seated, and would you state your name for the record and spell your first and last name?
Andrew Smith, Andrew Smith, SMI.
Go ahead, Pastor.
Good morning, Mr. Smith.
Good morning.
Can you tell the jury what your profession is?
I work for a real estate company. I'm the chief operating officer.
But you're also a lawyer.
It's on the way.
Okay. So you're not technically practicing law, is that fair to say? Or,
Not normally, from time to time I will, but that's my primary responsibility.
okay, what are your primary responsibilities?
My title, I'm responsible for all the operations of a portfolio of real estate holdings, commercial, multifamily, industrial, throughout the country.
And how many employees in the company?
Approximately 700.
So you're the COO of a real estate management company that has 700 employees, did I get that right?
That's correct.
Do you know Jennifer Crumbley?
I do.
How do you know her?
She worked for our company. She was marketing director of my company.
Do you know what the time frame that was?
I believe she had been a marketing director for approximately a year, a little longer. Before that, she was on the marketing team at different capacity. I'm not really sure when she hired him, but it was approximately 5 years, I think.
Okay. She's here in the courtroom today.
I do.
Can you tell the judge something she's wearing?
Tan brown, what's she, sport coat, glasses?
May the record reflect who's properly identified the defendant.
For the record, we'll start with that.
So, did you supervise Jennifer Crumbley?
I was her direct supervisor when she was the marketing director. Yes.
So how long was that?
I believe that was a year to year and a half.
What were her responsibilities as the marketing director?
She was responsible for handling the marketing of our portfolio of properties, dealing with outside vendors, social media, dealing with reviews, online reviews, helping with leasing training, all that goes into marketing asset.
Okay, and so does your company have social media accounts?
Yes.
What accounts do they have? In general, you don't have to.
In general, I know they have Facebook accounts for properties, and they have, I believe, Instagram as well.
Okay. Can you tell the jury what Jennifer's work week is? How many hours was she required to work, and what were the times that her beginning and end time?
I can approximate. She was a director, so I know she was responsible for a 40-hour work week. The start and finish time fluctuated depending on schedules, whether it was 8 to 4, 9 to 5 type of scenario.
Did she have a set schedule, or did it change day to day?
It was somewhat set with some flexibility depending on what was needed. I believe she came a little bit early, left a little bit early, if I recall correctly.
Okay. Was she ever allowed to work from home?
Yes, there was occasions where she would work from home.
And so you're saying she had done that before?
Yes.
Talk to me about the company's culture in terms of families.
I think it's very family friendly, family first type atmosphere.
So do you have employees that have issues with kids or family or personal things?
Me included, sure, yes.
Okay. And what is the company policy on that?
I think we're very big on family first culture. You can need time away we have a PTO policy, a paid time off policy to cover handling of your needs, but we also are very friendly when it comes to needing time for addressing what may be a child issue or child care, whatever it may be. Routinely, people will bring kids into work because of post-COVID needs for daycare and school closings and snow, things like that.
What happened when the pandemic was in full force? Were employees still coming in every day, or were they working remotely, or both?
There was a little bit of both, depending on the job and the ability to do so.
Does the company provide health insurance?
We offer health insurance, yes.
And do you know if Jennifer had health insurance?
Do not know.
Okay. Do you know whether or not anyone else in her family was insured?
I have no idea. On our company policy,
Yes.
I'd have to look at those records. I don't know.
Okay, so if I handed you the records, would that refresh your recollection?
I'm not in charge of HR, but it would at least, I would assume, indicate whether or not she was on our policy.
Okay, thank you. You're the COO, correct?
Correct.
Who does the human resources person report to?
A few people in the include.
Okay, and does the company regularly keep benefits documents in the normal course of business for each employee?
Absolutely.
Okay, may I approach her?
Sure.
Mr. Smith, I'm handing you a portion of the personnel file for Jennifer Crumbley that the defense has been provided. What is that?
This appears to be a 2021 new hire open enrollment form for what I believe to be healthcare options, medical healthcare options that year.
Okay, and I'm sorry, can I approach? Is this what you're looking at? This is contained in there, just want to make.
Yeah, this is a different document, but it's similar. Okay.
All right, and what's that document? That's also part of her personnel file, but what is that?
Okay, this document appears to be a Guardian life insurance open enrollment form for 2021 for Jennifer Crumbley.
Okay, and the previous document you just had, what does that indicate? Who was enrolled in the health benefits?
It appears to be for Jennifer Crumbley, and there were multiple options. It appears she checked, or someone checked the box. She did, I believe, for single medical low plan.
And how much was that per month, if you know?
Well, it listed as $102.55 bi-weekly, so I guess it'd be $204 or $5 approximately a month.
And do you know approximately what the cost would have been to add somebody in her family?
So on this plan, if I file it from single to employee plus one, it would have been $404. Family, $533.81.
Is that once a month or 5?
These are all bi-weekly.
Okay. All right, may I approach it?
You're not marking it.
No. I want to talk to you about November 30th, 2021. Do you remember that day?
I do.
Okay. As a matter of your daily routine, what were your hours?
It depends on my day, where I'm going, what's going on in the day, but it's typical standard 40-hour work week. Some days can be longer, some days can be shorter.
You're also a parent, so did you come in early or did you come in late? What were you?
I remember that day specifically. I forget I was coming from that morning, but I remember that I was driving when I got a text from that morning. I think it was around 10 a.m.
Okay. I'm going to show you an exhibit that's, I think it's been previously marked, that is from Jennifer's phone. How did you communicate with Jennifer?
In person,
Text
email.
message or Facebook Messenger? I'm sorry.
Oh, use text message would be primary. Yeah, text message.
Okay. This has been marked 152. I don't know if the jurors' eyes are. Oh, thank you so much. This monitor's not on.
Your Honor, I believe it's not only been marked, but it's admitted. I
It's
just want-
admitted.
Just check it, okay.
Yeah, she's noticing that the TV isn't on. So I don't know how to turn it on. Magic. It's on.
Oh, thank you. Could the jury let me know if they can't see? I have trouble, a little trouble with seeing that. But can you see on the monitor?
Yes.
These are communications that begin that morning or that day, just from Jennifer Crumbley's phone. Looking through this exhibit, is that representative of your text messages that day?
I recognize the first two texts. I believe I recognize all the texts correctly.
Okay, is this the entire communication you had that day?
No.
So are you saying something's missing?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to now show you screenshots that we received from your phone and your text messages between Jennifer Crumbley that same day.
Use the ones I gave you. Yes.
Okay. Is your testimony that these accurately depict the entire text conversation of that day?
Could you scroll down?
Sure.
This looks accurate. Yes.
Okay. So the exhibit I just showed you had 4 messages, around 4 or 5. This is actually several messages. Is this your full conversation?
This would be the full conversation. Yes. I texted it.
Okay. And when did you never deleted any text messages? Okay. So this is exactly what it was that you turned over to law enforcement.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. The first text, if you can see this exhibit, if you go to the top, Mr. Smith, what's the time on the first text you received from Jennifer Crumbley?
This is Tuesday, 10:05 a.m.
You said earlier, did you say you were driving to work or you were at work?
I forget. I was driving. Where I was going, I recall. Probably to work or coming from home. But I was
All right.
driving. Yes.
Assuming you weren't reading your text messages while driving, this is when you received the text. Can you read her text to you?
I have to go to my kid's school. Counselor just called, and this is what I'm dealing with. I'll be back by 11:30, 12 at the latest.
Okay, so that text came in at 10:05, and she is telling you exactly when she'll be back.
That's what it says, yeah.
Okay, so did you, then she attaches this, a picture. Do you know what that is?
I know now what it is.
Did you look at it at the time you received it?
No, I did look at it. It was later that day that I looked at it, but not at the time I was driving at the time. I just saw the text on my phone pop up and I
Okay.
just saw it.
Was it required that Jennifer let you know if she was leaving and where she was going, or was this unusual?
No, I mean, we want people to let us know if they're leaving, coming, going. She was good about that. She let me know if she was coming and going.
Sorry, is there something going on?
No,
What do you mean?
okay, thank you. Can you, the next, I believe there's some issue with the camera in the back, but I don't know. Can I proceed, Aaron?
Your Honor, I'm sorry, it's very distracting, so I'm just asking if
Wait, what do
there's
you mean?
something happening.
Yeah,
Can we-
I'm sorry, what did you say?
it's hard to hear the witness of the conversation.
Oh, it's hard to hear the witness. Yeah, everybody has to be quiet, okay? So, yeah, yes, thank you.
May I proceed?
Yes.
The next message, well, before we get to the next message, tell me when was the first time you actually saw Jennifer Crumbley that day?
I recall, I don't remember the exact timeline. It's been 2 years, but I recall seeing her at the office around noon that day.
And where did you see her?
It was in the copy room. It's like an open copy room, storage type stationary area.
And did she say anything to you?
I recall walking up to her asking how was she doing, was she doing okay? And I recalled her mentioning that she had to get her child counseling. She seemed down. I think she had mentioned a few things. I recall her mentioning that his dog had passed away and a grandparent or grandparents had passed away. She may have said more. I remember she seemed down. I think she said she felt like she was failing him, and she had to get him counseling.
When she said, I feel like I'm failing him, who was she talking about?
I believe her son.
And what was your response?
I remember saying, if he needs counseling, I'm glad you're getting him counseling. Get him the help he needs. We're glad to hear you're getting him that help.
Okay, did you and Jennifer have a friendship outside of work?
No,
Did you ever socialize together outside of any work centered event?
No.
You said you didn't Facebook message her, your conversations were just text or calling or email?
there may have been a Facebook message where she would send me photos from a property because the size or scope I remember, but that'd be about it. But our communication will be in person, email, phone, or text.
And before this occurred, what, if anything, did you know about her son?
I knew she had a son in school. When she mentioned small talk, I knew he was in school. I recall something about him being in a bowling and avid bowler, if I recall correctly. And I remember that she mentioned some vacations they went on, some camping, some family trips. I recalled her discussing, he had a part-time job, I remember mentioning it sometime in the past. Small stuff like that, nothing much more.
Okay, did she ever talk to you about taking him skiing?
I know she was big into skiing. I don't recall her mentioning her son skiing, I don't know.
How do you know she was big into skiing?
She talked about it quite a bit. I recall like volunteered or she was like a volunteer ski instructor or ski school type thing. I don't remember
Or ski
exactly.
patrol?
Ski patrol sounds more like that.
Do you know where that was?
Local, one of the local mountains, local hills.
Was her son with her that day?
At the office on the 30th?
Yes.
No,
Would that have been allowed?
sure.
What was her schedule that day in terms of what she was required to be doing?
I don't know what her schedule was that day. She's the director. I give her some flexibility. I do know that we had a property visit scheduled that afternoon that she was invited to.
Was that a required meeting?
No, not at all.
Did you know at that time the school asked Mrs. Crumbley to get him counseling that day? Did she ever tell you that?
No, she just told me she had to give him counseling, was going to give him counseling.
Was there any big project or assignment that Jennifer Crumbley was expected to do that day, an upcoming deadline that needed to be met that day?
I can't think of any deadline or anything bigger than this, but I'm sure she had a busy schedule as a director. I just don't recall anything specific now.
Okay. I guess what I'm asking is, had she asked to leave that day, would that have been a problem for the company? Or you were her supervisor?
It would have been no problem at all.
Did she have any paid time off collected?
I don't know what bank she had for PTO, but it wouldn't matter to me.
When was the next time you had any contact with Jennifer Crumbley after you saw her in the copy room?
We had a quick meeting with another colleague shortly thereafter, 20 minutes, 30 minutes thereafter.
Can you give me a time frame about?
I think I saw her in the copy room about noon. And so 20, 30 minutes thereafter, around 12:20, 12:30 that afternoon, And we talked about the property we were gonna visit, kind of what our goals, why we were going there. And we had talked, I think, about some calls and things we down the road a couple days later.
Okay, and when, after that was your next contact with her?
I recall, because I was in a Zoom hearing at the time, about 1 o'clock, I think it was.
Okay,
I heard some loud commotion outside my office, like yelling. And,
how close is Jennifer Crumbley's office, was it to yours?
10, 12 feet away.
Okay, and you said you heard, I don't want to put words in your mouth, what did you hear?
No, I just remember yelling, like a commotion, loud noise, like yelling, screaming type noise coming from down the hall.
And what did you do next?
I stepped away from my hearing. I looked outside to see what the noise was, and I saw her like racing out of her office, racing down the hall.
Did you learn, or did she say where she was going, or what she was upset about?
I recall her saying there was an active shooter at her child's school, and I remember saying to her, go.
And so obviously you didn't have a problem with her leaving.
No.
When was the next time that you had any contact with her after she left around 1 o'clock?
I got the text on this thread, the one on, it says 123, the gun is gone, so the bullets was the next time I received any communication from her.
Okay, so she leaves around 1. The text comes in at 1:23. Let's talk about this for a second. Did you know something about a gun prior to this?
No,
Did you know that she had purchased a gun for her son?
no.
Okay, so when you got this text, what were you thinking?
I didn't know what to think. It alarmed me.
Okay,
She just ran out and I got that text. I was really confused and alarmed.
all right, and what did you respond?
I responded by saying, I'm praying everything is okay.
And then the next text was from her. Can you read what she texted you?
There was a phone call that came in before that next text, if you just, her timeline, if you remember that, but
Yes, I'm sorry, thank you. So she made a phone call that came in at what time? 1:25?
I don't remember the exact times, I can remember what happened.
Okay, so do you remember when you're saying the call came after I'm praying everything is okay?
I remember this because I wasn't here, I was in court hearing, covering hearing, and I stepped away and I got that because I was so alarmed by it that I walked down to my human resource director's office to let them know what had just transpired, to show her this text. And when I was in
And when you say this text, you mean just the one, the gun's gone and so are the bullets?
correct,
Okay, go ahead.
correct. Then I recalled receiving a phone call from her. I was in my HR director's office at the time. I put on speaker and I remember this conversation.
And can you tell me what the conversation was about? What did Jennifer say?
I can't remember everything. I remember vividly the sound of sirens in the background.
Was she in her car driving? Was she at home?
I believe she was in a car, she's in a car, I believe, driving. I remember her saying she was trying to get to her child's school.
Okay, so what did she say?
I remember her telling us she was trying to get to her child's school. I believe she said something about the gun was missing, or family gun was missing. It was me and our HR director were both, we just both said, call the police, please call the police. I remember her saying that her husband had already called the police.
Okay, and were you aware that if her husband, first of all, had you ever met James Crumbley?
I never personally know.
Okay, were you aware that he in fact did call 911?
No, I mean, just what she told us.
Okay, did she say he had already called, or he was going to call?
I believe she said he had already called the police.
What happened after that? Did you end the conversation? Did she end the conversation?
I don't remember much more. It was short. We may have said, let us know what we can do to help, or let us know what we can do. Then I stayed with my HR director because we were trying to find out what was actually going on, and I got these next texts.
So you ended the call.
Yes.
You're still in the HR director's office, or were you in another room?
If I left, I would have left to go back to my office, which is about a minute away to log off of Zoom.
Okay.
Before I can't remember exactly, but it would have been there or her office.
All right, and then the next text was from you or Jennifer?
It's from Jennifer to me.
Okay, can you read that?
OMG, Andy, he's going to kill himself. He must be the shooter.
All right, now there's no timestamp on those specific messages, which normally would indicate they're coming in along the same string. Is that correct, or do you remember there was a significant period of time that lapsed?
I don't remember the exact times, but I want to recall those being somewhat close in proximity within the same hour time frame.
Okay, and then the next text,
I need a lawyer at substation with police.
and then the next text.
Ethan did it.
Okay. What's going through your mind at this point?
Shock, fear, sadness, all of them, a lot of emotions. We didn't really know what to think.
Okay, and you testified earlier after I asked a few questions that you're actually a lawyer.
Yes,
Okay, do you practice any kind of criminal law?
never know.
Has she ever asked you for a lawyer before?
I I get asked that question a lot by people. She may have, I don't recall.
So it appears from this text string that you didn't respond via text right away.
No, I recall there was another phone call.
Okay,
Sometime shortly after that last text, Ethan did it. There was another phone call she made to me. Because I remember I was still in my HR director's office at the time. And we were together. Maybe another colleague was there.
was it on speaker or,
I put on speaker.
okay, what did she say?
I believe she said she was at the police station or had been at the police station and that she needed a lawyer. Can I recommend a lawyer?
And what did you say?
I couldn't think of one at the time. It's not my area. And I just couldn't think of one. And I think I told her I'd ask our corporate counsel if she could think of someone to recommend.
What was going on at the office at this point? Were there people around? The people in the office, did anyone have any outside knowledge of the shooting?
I don't know. I
Okay.
was working with human resources at the time and we were trying to figure out what was going on.
What eventually did you decide? Did you go back to work? Did you just wait for another communication? Did you start looking for a lawyer?
I did not look for a lawyer. I mentioned as I told her, I mentioned to corporate counsel that this is what we just learned and she's reaching out. If you could reach out back to her, let her know. I know we were closely watching the news, trying to figure out what was happening, what had happened. And I remember I left a little bit early that day to go to my family.
Why'd you do that?
There were a lot of emotions going on. I just wanted to get home and see my family.
Okay. At some point, did you receive another text from Jennifer Crumbley?
Yes, at 3:39, when this thread says I got a text that
So that's about 2.5 hours after she left the office when the shooting occurred?
approximately, yes.
All right, and what does the text say?
I need my job. Please don't judge me for what my son did.
What did you think when you received that text?
I was a little taken back. I was surprised that she was worried about work right then.
Did you respond?
I did at 5:47 p.m. when we read the text.
So at this point, were you at work or were you home with your family?
I think I was home at that point.
Okay, and your response was what?
I can't even begin to understand what you're going through. I'm praying for you. I asked Carolyn to text you some attorney recommendations. Carolyn's our corporate counsel.
All right, and did she respond?
She did. I don't know what time, but it was later after that text. They were taking my cell phone.
Was that the last communication you had with Jennifer Crumbley?
That's the last time I can recall communicating with her.
Okay, at some point, did the company terminate her employment?
Yes, yes, she was terminated.
Okay, do you remember about when that was?
I want to say it was a couple of days. I don't remember the exact date. It was some days after this incident, November 30th. Whether it was 2 or 3 days, I don't remember exactly.
At the beginning of this, I showed you the text string from Jennifer's phone versus your phone. Was there any ever discussion or comments from Jennifer about why she's deleting text messages to you?
Did she ever talk to me about the, no, I never had that conversation with her.
Do you know why?
I have to ask about it.
All right, nothing further.
Your Honor, I have quite a bit of cross because there's previous testimony. Is it a time to break?
No. I don't know.
Your Honor, if we could just finish with the cross so we can take this
Yeah,
witness.
yeah, we had we're 2 hours
Okay,
up today.
I have
I'd like
no-
to know- You guys are starting that over there, yeah?
I have no problem. Okay.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Smith, I just want to go back to a couple of things you said. You and Jennifer, you would not say you guys were friends outside of work, correct?
Your coworkers from at work.
Okay, friendly at work, you guys would make small talk.
Sure, yes.
And you, when you heard that something was going on at the high school, you would agree with me that Mrs. Crumbley sounded very frantic.
When she called us the first time I heard the sirens, she definitely sounded frantic, yes.
You would agree she sounded shocked and concerned?
Yes,
And you testified that when you saw her at the office earlier, coming back from the school, she had appeared sad.
yes,
It was during that time when Mrs. Crumbley was at your office that you guys discussed the meeting she had at the school earlier that day.
yes,
And during that meeting, she told you that the school wanted her to get her son in some counseling, correct?
I don't know if she said this. I think so. I know she said she had to get her son counseling.
She was planning to get her son
Yes,
counseling.
yes, yes,
And it's appeared you were aware she was worried about her son at that time.
yes.
Mrs. Crumbley is not someone who had a history of constantly disrupting her day at work. Is that fair to say?
It's a tough question to answer that. Yeah, it's fair. I don't remember disruptions. No.
I suppose a better question would be, she was not a parent who was constantly having to leave work to go to her child's school for different reasons.
That I don't, yeah, I don't recall any other examples of that.
You never had any concerns personally about how Mrs. Crumbley parented her son.
I never had concerns, no.
And if anything, you would just hear about little bits and details about him. I think you testified about bowling, vacations, camping.
I recall I mentioned him, yes.
You recalled the part-time job, skiing.
I don't know, I know she skied, I don't know if he did, I don't remember that.
Okay. And in terms of Jennifer working at the company prior to her being terminated, you would agree with me that she was a pretty consistent hard worker.
I would agree with you, yes.
And Jennifer appeared to take her career very seriously.
I agree, yes.
She was diligent about attending meetings she was invited to or supposed to attend.
Yes,
She was somebody the company could count on to do her job.
I thought so, yes.
And there were times she took advantage of the flexibility that your company offered to allow her to go handle different matters she may have needed to handle.
I know she would take advantage of the flexibility to do what I don't know, but sure.
Okay. And I'm correct when I say that Kathy Poliquin, she's the manager of HR, correct?
She's, was what at the time was the director of human resources.
I'm sorry, Director of Human Resources?
Correct.
Okay. I have her listed as a witness, but I may, based on the prosecution's questions, I may be able to just ask you. But if you're not the right person, can you just let me know?
Yes,
Okay, so you testified that to have a single person on the company's insurance was approximately $200 per month.
that's what I read, yes, yes.
And you would agree, well, and I'm sorry, when you say $200,
It's bi-weekly, so I don't know.
okay, that's what I was just gonna ask. So it's $200 twice a month.
My understanding is yes.
And if she had had another person added to the insurance, it would have been approximately $500 twice a month.
I don't have the document in front of me, but I know it went up from +1 and then went up again for family.
Okay, and when it goes up for family, are you aware of what it would have been for there to be 3 people on the insurance?
I'd be guessing, my understanding is family covers as many families you may have, immediate family, I don't know if it's 3 to 10, it covers your entire family, my understanding.
It's fair to say that in the past, you have complained that the healthcare cost taken from your paychecks is significant.
Have I complained? No, because I'm not on the health plan.
So you're not on the health plan at Princeton, correct?
I'm not on my company's plan, correct?
But I assume you have healthcare through somewhere else.
Correct.
And in this case, with the Crumbleys, you're not aware if they had healthcare through another source, correct?
Correct.
And as far as you know, Mr. Crumbley had a job, a professional job in the past. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I remember he had a job, a career, and I think he was laid off in between jobs at the time.
And you're not aware if Mrs. Crumbley, Mr. Crumbley, or their son was covered on Mr. Crumbley's insurance.
I'm not aware.
In addition to the insurance offered at Princeton, there's also a plan through Allied that you guys can take advantage of where you get virtual doctor visits. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware of that, yes.
And those virtual doctor visits are free as part of the Allied benefit.
I believe so, yes.
And you can also get Aflac supplemental insurance for yourself and your family members.
You're getting in the HR world, but my understanding is yes, you can elect those benefits.
Now, the open enrollment period is right in approximately November every year. Is that right?
I honestly don't recall when, but I know it's every year at the same time. It's open for approximately 30 days, I believe.
And you may not be the right witness, and if you're not, just let me know.
Okay.
Are you aware that in November of 2021, Mrs. Crumbley was doing anything with her insurance?
I'm not aware now.
Now, when you were texting or exchanging messages with Mrs. Crumbley, there was not any point in time where she said to you, "Hey, Andy, delete these texts," correct?
That's correct.
So she texted you over a photograph of that math paper.
She sent that to me, yes.
Obviously, when you look at that math paper, especially knowing what we know today, it's very alarming.
Yes.
And she texted you openly that the gun was gone and so are the bullets.
That's what she texted me.
And when you were texting with her, you were exchanging that kind words to her, supporting her and saying things along the lines of, "I'm praying for you, I hope everything's okay," things like that, correct?
I'm not thinking that exactly.
That exactly. And you knew at the time that you were communicating those things, Mrs. Crumbley, she was in a high state of stress.
I saw her run out of the office and panic.
Not only did you see her run out of the office and panic, you heard her screaming when she heard about the open shooter.
I heard her like yelling, screaming that she had to leave. There was an open, there was a, I forget exactly, but there was a shooting event going on at that school.
Definitely a strong reaction from Mrs. Crumbley about what was happening.
Yes.
Now, after Mrs. Crumbley found out more information, we saw the text where Mrs. Crumbley is saying, I need my job. Please don't judge me for what my son did, correct?
That's the text, correct?
Now, at that time, you're aware that James Crumbley was laid off.
I knew he was in between jobs. I don't know what he was doing at that point.
And so Mrs. Crumbley is certainly voicing the concern to you, I don't want to lose my job, correct?
She said in the text, I need my job.
As far as you knew from working with Mrs. Crumbley over time, she liked her job, was good at it, and valued that job.
I thought she was good at her job, yes.
And her text indicating she wanted to keep her job, you have no reason to believe she didn't want to keep her job.
No, no.
I have nothing further.
Redirect?
Nothing there. Can you be excused?
Yeah, you may step down here, please.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're now to sit. How about 4:31? We lost some time today. With one of the jurors was moving snowman, another one was. Good, we'll see that, okay?
All right, Secretary.
All right, you may be seated. You know, could I, have the prosecutor approach on an unrelated matter, actually sort of related matter, which is, the other, is, are you off? Yes. I just wanted to keep you quiet.
This is what I got from school today.
Okay, and what was your response to that? Did she tell you about the fight the night before?
It was brief.
Okay. Did the both of you work for Andrew Smith?
Yeah.
Okay.
Roughly 2017 to 2021.
Okay. Up until November of 2021?
Yes.
And what was your role with this company?
I worked under the operations director, so I was his direct assistant.
And who's his?
Andrew Smith.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
I'll make sure you keep your voice nice and loud for us. Okay?
Sorry.
Sorry. And what specifically did you do there?
I was the operations assistant, so I helped him with all of his daily calendaring and projects. I assisted other departments, administrative work.
Okay. And what about the defendant? What did she do, if you know?
She was the marketing director at the time.
Did the two of your work overlap?
Occasionally, we had meetings together sometimes. I prepared spreadsheets and things that she would receive as well. I'd help with some projects of hers as well.
Okay. Did the both of you work for Andrew Smith?
Yeah.
Okay. So both of you reported to him?
Yes.
Okay. Now, tell us about the physical proximity between your respective workstations, you and the defendant.
She worked directly across the hall from me, so if I was sitting here, she was probably where you are, her office.
So I'm about 7 or 8 feet away, would that be right?
Roughly, yes.
And were you in an office or in a cubicle or different?
A cubicle.
Okay.
And her office was directly across the hall.
And the defendant was in office?
Yes.
Okay, now what about Mr. Smith's office? Where was his at?
The office diagonal from mine. So I was on a corner, he was in the back corner.
Okay, so the three of you, generally speaking, were in the same proximity to each other?
Yes.
Okay. Now, specific to November of 2021, what hours would you generally work?
9 to 5.
Okay, and what about the defendant, if you know?
She got in earlier than me and she left around 4. I'm not sure what time she came in.
Again, nice and loud, please. Pretend I'm at the very back and you're shouting at me, it's okay. How would you describe your relationship with the defendant?
We were friendly coworkers. we talked on a daily basis, worked together.
Did you ever socialize with her outside of work?
No.
When you say you spoke with each other on a daily basis, tell us about that interaction, please.
You know, in the morning, if you work in an office, you say good morning to people, you talk to them, you keep cordial relationships with everyone to keep the professional relationship normal.
Okay, so fair to say that you get in the morning and say hello when you got there?
We'd say good morning, ask about our days or nights, you know, just kind of check in with each other.
Okay. Did you know that she was married?
Yes,
Okay. Had you ever met her husband?
No.
Did you know that she had a son?
yes.
Have you ever met him?
No.
Did she ever talk about her son?
Not often, but occasionally.
Okay. And those occasional times that she spoke about her son was in a positive or negative context?
It wasn't either really. It was kind of just, you know, that he had bowling or he had, they were camping or, so it wasn't necessarily negative.
Okay. Now, in these conversations, would she keep you abreast of certain things that were happening in her life?
Yes.
Did she also keep you abreast of certain things happening in her son's life?
Not as much, but yes.
Okay. Did she tell you about any of his friends?
One friend.
Okay. Can you tell me about that conversation?
When I heard about the friend, it was just that he was leaving and she was concerned about her son being lonely with his only friend going away. That's really all I knew.
Do you recall any of the time frame when this happened?
My time frame is kind of rough. I'm not sure exactly when I'm not sure when that happened.
Okay. It was before the shooting?
Yes.
Okay. Was it a year before the shooting, a week before the shooting, a month before the shooting? Or
It was
do you not
that year, maybe in the few months leading up to it,
Okay.
roughly, and I'm not positive on the timeline.
Did she ever tell you anything of a concerning nature about her son?
There, just that he was lonely with his friend gone. So that's, you know, always with teens, you know, you always worry that they're going to be sad or lonely with that. They had a couple fights, but other than that, nothing crazy. She didn't. There was one time where he had fainted at work. She mentioned that before too, but nothing that really stood out to me before the event.
Now, Ms. Holland, before we get into some of the specifics, just so we all understand, tell us sort of some of your job responsibilities as an assistant in operations.
I helped with a lot of claims. Andy was a lawyer, so he did a lot of the subrogation claims that came in through the apartments. So I worked on a lot of the claims. I worked with preparing spreadsheets and documents for other departments and for CFO and for marketing, to prep his calendar. I worked in other departments and did projects for them as well. So I would kind of do audits of vendors, lots of things. Operations was kind of a catch-all.
Okay.
So I did kind of have my hand in a lot of different departments.
And how long did you work with Mr. Smith?
I was with the company for 5 years. I was with Andy probably for 4 of those 5 years. We were in the legal department for 1 year, and then I was his assistant for two or three.
Okay. And how long did you work with the defendant?
We were close probably for those 2 years, roughly, when I worked with Andy, and we were in the same corporate together.
Okay.
So there's a lot of shifting in the company.
Now, you said you were friendly at work, but you didn't socialize outside work?
Correct.
Okay. Did you follow her on social media?
We were friends on social media, yeah.
Did you keep that public or private?
It was public, like you could see we were friends. A lot of my coworkers, just in any company, I friend everyone that asks, but I don't necessarily follow their feed. It's just something I like to do, so I don't like to see all of my coworkers' lives
Sure.
all the time. So we were friends on Facebook, but I didn't see her day-to-day posts.
Okay. And that's the setting that you selected?
Yes,
Okay.
for almost everyone I work with.
Okay. So I want to direct your attention now to November the 30th, 2021. Do you remember that day?
I do.
Were you working that day?
Yes,
Do you recall if Jennifer was also working?
2 weeks.
Now, do you recall if you had an initial conversation with her in the morning when she got to work?
Yes, we kind of just had the good morning, check in with each other. So we did talk briefly in the morning.
Now, you mentioned that she had talked to you about fights before. Did she tell you about a fight the night before?
It was brief. She just mentioned that they had a fight. I'm not sure who initiated it. I didn't ask questions. It was kind of just, I asked her how her night went, how is she?
Mhm.
She said she had a rough night, that they had a fight.
Did she say whose day?
No, it sounded like it was all of them, but she said that Ethan was out of the house and she locked him.
She locked him out of the house?
Yes.
Did you have a response to that?
No, I kind of I didn't really ask questions. I didn't push it or anything. I just kind of let it go.
Okay.
It was the morning.
Did you give her any indication? Well, let me ask you this. What did you think about that?
I kind of just gave a look and,
What do you mean give a look?
kind of just like surprised,
Okay.
but I didn't really go into detail. about
Did
it.
she react to your surprised look?
I don't really remember.
Okay. Did she say anything else about it?
I don't remember, I don't think so, but I don't remember.
Now, in the past, the 2 years that you had worked with Jennifer, you said that she would occasionally talk about her son. Is that, you have to say yes or no?
Oh, sorry, I was just listening. I was
That's all right, no,
waiting
that's
for
fine.
you to finish. Yes.
You were aware that the defendant was afraid that he would be lonely, is that right? Is that
Yes.
Okay. Did she ever tell you about things going around in the home that caused her concern, or at least not concern to talk to you about?
Around the home, the only thing that was concerning, I don't remember when this happened. She just mentioned that he was hearing things in the house, but I didn't hear, she didn't go into detail about it, or I didn't ask questions. But
Now, as far as time frame, are you able to give the jury an idea of a month, a week, a year prior to the shooting, or you're not
it
sure?
was within the year, I want to say within, again, maybe 6 months, 7 months, I don't remember, but it was definitely the year of the shooting.
Now, in regards to the conversation you had with her on November the 30th about the fight that the defendant had the night before, did the defendant tell you that she had locked him out of the house before?
I thought maybe I don't remember the exact conversation. I tried to think back at it and I don't remember exactly.
Okay. So what stands out to you the most about that conversation?
I mean, just that was the end of a fight and how it was handled.
And how the defendant handled it?
Yeah, but I'm not sure who did it, but they just said that he was locked out. I don't know who did it.
Okay. Now, we know from other evidence that's been admitted already that Jennifer arrived to your place of employment at 9:04 a.m. on November the 30th, 2021. Does that sound right to you?
Yes,
Okay. Do you remember if you arrived before or after?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Usually I arrived after her though, so I would assume that, but
Okay. And if you don't remember, that's fine.
Yeah.
After you had that conversation with the defendant, are you aware if she received a phone call?
I believe so. And she received a phone call in the morning. Yes,
That morning of November the 30th?
yes.
Okay. Were you made aware of who called her?
I believe I believe it was from the school. Yes.
From, do you know which school?
Oxford.
Oxford High School?
Yes,
Okay. Were you there when she received the phone call?
I was. Yes,
Okay. Now, when I say there, in her office, or were you in your own workspace?
I was in my own workspace.
When she received the phone call, was her door to her office open?
Yes.
So if her office was about the distance between me and you, where would she be seated at inside the office?
She was probably a little bit further back, so the first row of seats was probably where she was sitting.
So maybe 15, 20 feet?
Yeah, because she sat a little bit further back in her office, and I was a little pushed back from my wall too, so there was a little bit of distance. But
Okay. And how were you able to tell who called her?
I just heard the phone call. I didn't know who called her at first, but she mentioned she had a call from the school afterwards.
Okay, so she told you about the phone call afterwards.
Yes.
And tell me about that conversation.
She received a call, and there was another call afterwards, so there was a little bit of time in between the call. But she talked to me as she was about to leave because of the call. So she came over and showed me something on her phone and said she had to go.
Do you remember what she showed you?
She showed me the drawing that her son had drawn at school.
Okay. Did she tell you how she got that drawing?
She said the school had sent it to her.
And how did she show it to you?
It was on her phone, and she just held it up and she said, "This is what I got from school today."
Okay. And what was your response to that?
I looked at it and I thought it was scary. I thought it was intimidating to see the pictures that were on there.
And what was Jennifer's response?
She didn't seem overly worried, but she didn't seem like she was blowing it off. I think she was getting ready to go to school. She was coming over to let me know she was leaving. I don't think Annie was there yet. So it was more of like if you see him, let him know.
Okay. And if I were to tell you that there's surveillance footage that shows her leaving at 10:12 a.m., does that sound about right?
Yes.
So just so we have an idea of the chronology of November the 30th. And I know you want to be accurate, so I want to make sure that this is all accurate. Jennifer arrived at 9:04 a.m. Well, you don't just keep that.
No.
Okay. You arrived close to time, the same time.
Probably close to time. I was
Okay.
usually, sometimes things happen a little later, but I was usually there at or around 9.
Okay. And then you had your typical initial check-in conversation?
Mhm.
Is that
Yes.
Okay. And in that conversation is when she shared with you about the fight the night before?
Yes.
And then sometime later, you were aware that she received that phone call and then she left that night.
Yes.
From the time that she left at 10:12 a.m. and went to the school, before she came back, did you have any conversation with her?
I'm sorry, can you repeat it?
Did you see her again that day?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see her again back at your appointment?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any phone calls or texts with her from the time that she was gone to the time she came back?
No.
So if evidence showed that she arrived back at work at 11:24, does that sound right to you?
Yes.
Did you speak with her when she came back to work?
Yes.
So tell me about that, please.
She came in and it was kind of just, she has kind of a sarcastic personality, so when she came in, she kind of visibly slumped and was, said, I feel like a failure as a parent. She said that there was a meeting at the school and that there were the drawings and they were worried about him and that he needed to get into counseling within 48 hours.
What was your response?
I just said that was, I said I was sorry. I think I said something along the lines of that, just showing concern and compassion for what was going on. She went into a little more detail about the drawing and talked to me about it. And
Did she show you the drawing while she gave you detail about it?
I know I saw it before the meeting, but I don't remember if she showed it to me again, to be honest. So I don't remember if I saw it after too. But we talked about it and I just remember telling her that, it was scary and, maybe she should spend some time with him to make a good one.
Did she ask you your advice?
She didn't ask for it, no.
Okay. But what was the advice that you gave?
I just said that I think I would have brought my son home if it had happened to me. Something along the lines of that. I just said I would have brought my son home.
So if she arrived back at 11:24 a.m. and we know that she left at 1:18 p.m., do you recall about what time you had a conversation with her?
No, it was right after she got back. I think when she was coming in, she stopped at my desk. And
Oh, before she even went to her office.
I think so.
Okay.
I don't remember though, but it was very quick and she did.
After you had the conversation with her about the drawing and you gave your advice on it, did you speak with her again?
Not until she left for the day.
Okay, tell me about that, please.
That was when she got the call. I'm not sure who called her, but somehow she got the notification that there was the shooting at the school. And she very abruptly, very, like anyone, jumped up and was nervous, scared, ran out the door.
Did you understand what was happening?
I mean, at first no, but then she went over and told Andy, and I sit, my desk is kind of like two back walls that are full and then kind of like this, two half walls, so I can hear anything that's going on. So she told Andy and that's how I learned what happened.
Okay. And if I told you it was 1:18 p.m., would that sound right to you?
Yes.
Did you have any conversation with her after that?
No, I reached out to her just because I didn't know any part of the situation. I didn't know if it was her son. I didn't know if it was someone else. I didn't know. So I reached out to her and just told her I was thinking of her and I hope everything's okay. But we didn't talk. She didn't respond.
She did not respond?
No.
You have one more here. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Holland, you have previously testified in a hearing in court about this case, correct?
Yes.
And that hearing took place back in April of 2022. Do you recall that?
Was it April? I
Would
thought
it
it was,
be spring?
yeah, I thought it was maybe February.
Oh, it might have been.
I don't believe it was April though.
I'm sorry, you're correct. February 24th, 2022?
Yes.
And that would be a lot closer in time than obviously now.
Correct.
And in addition to that, when law enforcement was investigating, you cooperated with law enforcement and did interviews with them. Is that correct?
Yes.
And in fact, on December 10th, 2021, you wrote a statement about anything you knew regarding the Crumbleys, correct?
Yes.
And the law enforcement wanted to know information about Mr. or Mrs. Crumbley and their son. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
And on that date, you provided, I don't know, it looks like you typed the statement out on December 10th, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you send it to law enforcement that same day?
I sent it to the company attorney. I don't know what they did with it after.
Okay, and if you need to see your statement, let me know. I will have a couple of questions about it. So I just want to make sure I understand you're involved in this case a little bit in the investigation. You were involved?
Yes.
You wrote the statement?
Yes.
And you testified once before?
Yes.
Now, when you testified before, you were directly asked if you were friends with Jennifer Crumbley. Your answer was, no, we are not friends, correct?
Yes.
Jennifer Crumbley is not someone that you consider to be a friend to you.
Correct.
And you guys were polite enough at work, talking back and forth,
Yes.
and you were polite enough to be friends on Facebook, but didn't really monitor or pay attention to her page. Now, you are aware, obviously, that Mrs. Crumbley had a son named Ethan.
Yes.
And on November 30th, there were a couple of times that day, we can agree, that Mrs. Crumbley was concerned about her son.
Yes.
When she came into work on November 30th, she told you there had been an argument the night before.
Yes.
And it's your testimony, you can't remember any details about the argument, but you remember something about Mrs. Crumbley saying she locked him out.
There was an argument. I didn't ask questions or go into detail. I didn't think it was something I wanted to really engage in. She mentioned there was a fight. She mentioned that he was locked out.
You don't know anything about him being locked out, any details beyond him, that there was a claim he was locked out.
Correct.
So you don't know if he was locked out because he made an accident and left keys in the house, or if Jennifer Crumbley intentionally locked him out. You don't know the context around any of that, correct? I'm sorry?
I don't know.
Now, when she was talking to you about going over to this, or I'm sorry, when she was talking to you about Ethan Crumbley, she expressed that she was concerned specifically about him being lonely, correct?
Yes,
And she also said that she also appeared to be concerned about the drawing when she saw that.
yes,
And she showed you a picture of the drawing.
yes,
And ultimately, when she left to go to the school, she appeared to be very nervous and scared. You testified to that.
when she went to the meeting,
When she went to the school the second time, when
responding to the shooting?
Yes.
Yes, she was there.
she was very nervous and scared, and that's when you testified she ran quickly out the door, correct?
Yes,
When she went to the school the first time, there was not any hesitation expressed to you about going over to the school to meet with a counselor, correct?
I felt like there was maybe a little hesitation. I think she called her husband first. So it wasn't an immediate leave to go there.
At that time, there wasn't anything like a shooting going on or something crazy urgent, in the same way there was in the afternoon, correct? So she left the office though, and she did physically go meet with the school, and then she returned back to the office.
Yes,
You and Mrs. Crumbley discussed the time, the appointment she had over with the school and the school counselor.
yes,
It was your understanding that she planned to get counseling for her son.
I don't know. She said it was a requirement from the school. I don't know what her plans were.
Okay, so she said that the school wanted her to get counseling,
Yes,
and she didn't tell you, I'm not getting you counseling, or I think that's a garbage request, correct?
correct.
And you gave her some advice, being, I think it would be nice if you spent time with him, correct?
Correct.
And you suggested maybe they go have a mother-son experience, like seeing a movie or taking him out, just the two of them, correct?
Yes,
And it's fair to say that you know Jennifer from work, as you described, but you don't know Ethan Crumbley at all. It's also fair to say that you don't have teenagers of your own that you parent on a daily basis. So any advice you gave to Mrs. Crumbley about you should spend time with them, go see a movie, you don't have personal experience about a mother-son experience with a teenager, correct?
I'm a parent, but no, not of a teenager. I still feel like I have instincts as a parent to understand how I would handle that situation.
Okay, so you have judgments about how you feel Mrs. Crumbley handled that situation, fair to say?
I wasn't judging her. I was giving her what I would do.
Okay, well, right now, saying what you have your own personal opinions, that those are the,
argument, Judge.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you've never met Ethan Crumbley, and you don't have much awareness of how much time Mrs. Crumbley would spend with him. Is that a fair statement?
Correct.
Now, although you guys were Facebook friends, you testified you obviously did not follow her on Facebook and see every single post, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but you are aware on Facebook she would post about a variety of topics.
Yeah, I saw a few things. Yes.
So some of the things you saw were about her horses.
Yes.
There's definitely pictures she posted, including her son.
I don't think I saw her son.
Pictures of holidays.
I don't think I saw holidays.
Pictures of, and do you recall seeing, you don't recall seeing any pictures of her son?
I don't recall.
Do you recall seeing photographs of the family home?
When she was working on it, but she would show me pictures too. So I don't know if I saw that on Facebook or if she showed it to me.
So one of the interests Mrs. Crumbley would talk to you about is home improvement, doing things, house projects.
Yes.
Were you aware that Mrs. Crumbley went camping with her son and on vacations?
Yes.
Did you ever see the photographs of those things and boating and things along those lines on Facebook?
I don't recall. I don't think so, but they, like I said, they might have been posted, but I didn't follow a lot of my coworkers, so I didn't see a lot of their posts unless I was actually friends with them and hung out with them and interacted with them outside of work. I didn't really see their posts. I didn't follow them. So she may have posted it, but I didn't see it.
It's fair to say you have no personal awareness of any of those things, whether they were on Facebook or happening in her life, correct?
Correct. A lot of the times, unless she showed it to me, I wouldn't see it online.
So it's fair to say that there were certainly topics going on in her life, if those topics are true, like posting pictures on holidays and things like that, activities with her son, you're just not aware of.
Correct.
Now, you testified that you were alarmed by seeing the math paperwork when you first saw the worksheet, correct?
Yes.
The drawings on the page did not concern you so much that you expected there would be a school shooting later that day, correct?
Without context, yes, correct.
You didn't expect that some major tragedy would unfold based on what you saw in that photograph.
Correct.
And you were aware that Mrs. Crumbley had returned to work and her son had stayed in school.
Correct.
You agree with me that Jennifer Crumbley, and I believe you testified to this on direct, can have a sarcastic personality. So there's oftentimes things where Jennifer will say something, but you can tell because you know her that she's being sarcastic.
Yes.
Now, when she said she's a failure as a parent, you said that seemed sarcastic to you.
Yes.
It's also fair to say that while that may have been partially sarcastic, Jennifer Crumbley was certainly expressing concern to you that day about her son.
Maybe. I don't know if it was concern. She was showing me the photo. She told me a lot of stories. Maybe. But she showed me in a normal manner. She didn't seem overly upset or concerned about it. But
Okay. When you've testified previously, obviously it was closer in time to November 30th of 2021. Yes?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was a
Is,
question.
is that, okay.
Yes, I did.
And when you testified that day about what Jennifer Crumbley said, you were asked, what did she say? And I'm on page 136 of the transcript. You said they were concerned with his drawing and they were concerned that he may be feeling badly, and it goes on from there, correct?
Correct.
And so based on her saying that she was concerned, you're saying now that you don't know if she truly was concerned? Is that your point?
I think at the time I was assuming she was concerned, but like I was trying to portray now, I don't know how she felt. I didn't ask her how she felt. She didn't tell me how she felt. She came over and showed it to me and we talked about it, but she didn't say anything specific.
Do you recall being asked by Miss McDonald, I'm on page 137 of the transcript, what was her, meaning Jennifer Crumbley's demeanor when she was talking to you about this? And you testified, my initial thought was it was a little sarcastic, the way she said she felt like a failure. As she was talking, it was a little concerned, meaning Mrs. Crumbley was a little concerned.
Yes.
It's fair to say over time, you're looking back at what happened on November 30th with more information than you had as that day unfolded, correct?
Correct.
What happened on November 30th when kids were killed, people were injured, that was something you never expected in your own head, correct?
Correct.
When there was news that there was an open shooter at the school, it's fair to say that Jennifer Crumbley appeared to be very surprised and shocked that that was unfolding.
Yes.
And we can agree that looking back at the events of November 30th, you have different information today than you had now, correct?
Correct.
And over these 2 years that have elapsed, you have had zero contact with Mrs. Crumbley.
Correct.
And you have had contact, however, with the prosecutor's office.
Correct.
You had contact with the prosecutor's office about your testimony today
Correct.
and about your testimony back at the preliminary exam, some of the testimony I referred to.
Correct.
Your Honor, may I please have one moment?
Sure.
I have nothing further.
Redress.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Allen. When we met with you, what did we tell you to do?
To tell the truth.
Is that what you're doing today?
Yes.
Now, I want to refer you back to the same page that counsel just asked you about. That's page 136, specifically line 19 of the preliminary examination. You were asked, okay, this is starting at line 9. How would you describe the writing on the worksheet? Your answer was disturbing. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And the question, okay, what was your response? Answer, I told her I thought it was scary. Question, I'm sorry, you said what? Your answer, I told her I thought it was scary. Question, okay. Answer, that he would draw that. Question, line 18. And what was her response? Line 19, she agreed. So that's, you recall that conversation with Jennifer
I
Crumbley?
do, yes.
Now, going back to the comment that Jennifer Crumbley made to you on the morning of November the 30th, 2021, did she tell you that her son locked himself out or she locked him out?
Your Honor, I would object because I believe the witness has said she doesn't know. Or she answered me that she didn't know.
Well, do you know if, do you know?
I don't know. I know that there was a comment made that he was locked out. I don't know how that happened.
Okay, let me ask you,
She
the
didn't
comment
say
was he was locked out.
Yes.
Okay, but she didn't go into any specifics?
Your Honor, I would object to further questions on this, that the witness has already answered the question.
Well, I guess I would have to say that once we asked the question, you asked the question, I was confused.
I just want to clarify.
Yeah, but you don't know.
I know that there was the comment that he was locked out, but I don't know how that happened.
Her exact words, the best you can recall.
To the best that I can recall was that he was locked out.
Okay, those are the words of Jennifer Crumbley.
Yes.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Right, you can step down. Who's next on this?
Yeah, Detective Story, you should be here in the hall. I'll just need a few minutes to set this up.
Yeah. This one, yeah, yeah, she can't see it, so it's on. Good afternoon. Do you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony about the is the true self you got?
I do.
Now, could you step in, have a seat, and then just state your name for the record and spell your first and last name?
Adam Stoyek, ADAMSTOYEK.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Sir, how are you employed?
I'm a detective with the Oakland County Sheriff's Office,
And how long have you been with the Sheriff's Office?
just under 12 years,
How long have you been a detective?
just under 4 years.
Where exactly is your, well, that's a bad question. You're a detective, but what substation?
I'm assigned to the city of Pine.
Okay, so you work at a Pontiac substation?
Correct.
What sort of things do you do there?
Investigate crime reports that come in on a daily basis. We have periods of being on call, investigating anything, homicides, assaults, things like that.
Okay. Now, prior to being a detective, what did you do?
I spent some time in the corrections division. I was in the courthouse, went to road patrol where I worked in Pontiac, different shifts in Pontiac. I was a school resource officer in Pontiac for a short period, and then I got moved up to the detective bureau about 4 years ago.
All right. Now, I'd like to direct your attention to November the 30th, 2021. Do you recall that day?
I do.
Were you working?
I was.
Were you made aware of the shooting at the Oxford High School that day?
I was.
And tell us, please, where were you when you were made aware of that shooting?
I was at the Pontiac substation at my desk.
Okay. And how was it that you came to learn about the shooting?
I had the my computer screen up, which had all the pending and active sheriff's office calls in the county, and actually saw the call at the school go up on the pending calls on the screen. I read it.
Okay, what do you mean by that? You saw it up on the pending call on the screen.
So yeah, it has like the active calls going on from the sheriff's department, and then on the bottom it will have like calls that haven't been dispatched yet. And I saw one at the high school go out, and I read what about the multiple calls that was going on at the high school. We alerted the rest of the detectives that was going on at the high school, and we all responded.
Okay, when you say we all responded, tell me what happened, please.
Initially, we got there, it was still pretty active. So my partner and I kind of linked up with a couple different guys, and we were searching classrooms. Some of the classrooms were still occupied by students, assisted with escorting them out of the school. Eventually, they called everybody to the front of the school, and we were tasked with searching certain classrooms.
Okay.
And we did that.
Now, what specific area of the school did you go to declare?
Initially, we went towards where the gymnasium was, towards the cafeteria and the gymnasium, which I believe was on the southwest corner of the school.
Okay. You said some of the classrooms were still occupied?
Correct.
Occupied by whom?
Students and teachers.
Okay. So tell us how that process worked to clear these rooms.
Yeah, so in a couple of the classrooms, the teachers were kind of initially hesitant to open the door. Kind of had to go back and forth with them, explaining that we were the police, and eventually they did open the door. There wasn't really a whole lot of words exchanged. Everybody just kind of looked at you and didn't really just kind of listen to what you told them to do. They were, escorted out of school, and we would clear the classroom to make sure there was nobody else in the classroom.
Okay. You said at some point while you were on scene, you were redirected to the office area of the school?
Yeah, they had like a command post kind of started in the front of the school.
Okay.
There.
And tell me what happened next.
Command officers were having us link up in teams, and they would give us specific classrooms to go search just to make sure that the classrooms were unoccupied. And there was no one else inside.
Okay. And you did that assignment?
Correct.
At some point, were you tasked with going to 112 East Street in Oxford?
Yeah, at some point after we cleared the classrooms, Lieutenant Hicks gathered a few of the Pontiac detectives, and we were told to go to 112 East Street and secure the residence prior to a search warrant being drafted.
So why were you directed to that specific residence?
That was the residence of Jennifer and James Crumbley.
Okay. And so I take it at that point in time, the school shooter was in custody,
Correct.
and officers had learned his identity, where he resided, and who his parents were?
Correct.
Okay. So did you go there?
I did.
At that point in time, did you know what you were going to find there?
No.
Okay, so did you have any information if there were going to be other casualties or anything else going on?
No, so at that time we didn't know if the house was going to be occupied or we didn't really have a clue what we were going into.
Okay. Who did you go there with?
My partner, Detective McPherson,
Any other officers?
Detective Peschke at the time, Detective Steele, Deputy Zajac was there, Deputy Mozak. And eventually Agent Brandon came too.
Okay. From the ATF?
Correct.
Okay. So you're a detective on that day. Are you wearing plain clothes or uniform?
Plain clothes.
So were some of the officers uniform?
Correct.
Okay. So tell us what you see when you arrive, please.
When I got there, the James and Jennifer were being escorted out of the house by deputies.
Okay. And tell me what's at this location? Is it a single family residence? Is it a multi-unit dwelling?
Yeah, it's a single family residence.
Okay. So you told us that you went there to secure the scene pending the search warrant. What does that mean?
Yeah, so you'll go there just to do an initial sweep of the residence, make sure no one's inside. You don't want anybody coming inside, obviously. It's more of a preservation of evidence thing to make sure that nothing gets taken from the house prior to the search warrant being completed.
Okay, is that something that occurs in every case with the search warrant?
Yeah, generally. Right.
Okay. A search warrant, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's authorization from a judge or magistrate to enter a person's dwelling and to seize certain items.
Correct.
Okay. And was your understanding that the search warrant was being obtained for that location?
Yes.
So when you enter a dwelling to secure it, do you actually search at that point?
Prior to the search warrant?
Correct.
Yeah, you're just kind of doing an initial sweep to make sure no one's hiding inside. There's no one inside that's not supposed to be. Just holding the house until you get a search warrant.
Okay, so your focus is looking for other individuals, but not for items.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking for individuals, but I mean, obviously, if there's things in plain sight, you're still observing things.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to show you what's been admitted and judged, so the court is clear as well as the defense counsel. Every exhibit we have on here, we've already gone through, and
Okay.
the court has already ruled the exhibit.
That's what we did last night when we guys house.
So this is exhibit 161. Can you see that on your screen?
I can.
Okay, so what is this that I'm sorry, 162, thank you. What am I showing you right here?
It looks like that'd be a sketch or a drawing of 112 East Street.
Okay, so this is a sketch of the home if you were looking down on it, would that be right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. So would you call this a small home or a large home?
It's a fairly small home.
Okay. I'm gonna move on here to 164. First of all, tell us how many bedrooms were in this home?
There's 3 bedrooms and a bathroom and then a basement as well.
All right, so going back to 162 here.
And these are all admitted, right?
Correct, Judge.
Yes, pursuant to prior court rulings or stipulation.
So if you could show us, please. Tell us about the layout. So tell us where the front door is. I see that at the top of the drawing there. Is that correct?
Yeah, towards where the sheriff's office emblem, you can kind of see the indentation, which would be the front door.
Okay. And the front door opens to the living room and dining room?
Yep, correct. You walk in, there was a living room to the right. To the left was kind of a smaller dining room. You walk into the kitchen, which is visible there. Just off the kitchen, there's a small hallway, bedroom to the right, bathroom straight ahead, then another bedroom. You walk down that small hallway, it looks like I believe it says washer and dryer. That would lead you into the master bedroom. Off the master bedroom, there's a backyard. And then off the master bedroom, near where it says washer and dryer, were the stairs to the basement.
Okay. So when we're saying master bedroom, is this a room that was added onto the home, or was it naturally a master bedroom? What was your impression when we went there?
Yeah, so to me, it was a master bedroom. It looks like it had adult clothing in it. It had a king bed. It had just more stuff in it. It was clearly that was the adult's bedroom.
Okay, you obtained information. What individuals stayed in which rooms prior to entry? Or
Correct.
At least prior to executing the search warrant.
Correct.
Okay. So let us know as we go through some of these pictures if you need to refer back. So here's 164. So did you learn if the shooter had 1 bedroom or 2 bedrooms?
2 bedrooms.
Okay. And so which bedroom is this that we're looking at?
So when you come in off the kitchen, there was the hallway. There was a bedroom to the right. There was a bathroom straight ahead. This would have been a bedroom to the left.
Okay.
Immediate left in the hallway.
So photographs are generally taken when a search warrant is executed, is that right?
Correct.
Are those photographs taken before or after things are disturbed?
It kind of depends on if someone at the scene is able to take pictures before, if there's an evidence technician.
Okay.
Generally, before we go in and search it, there'd be pictures taken.
In this case, there was an evidence tech available, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that was Detective Bizio, I believe?
Correct.
Okay, so these pictures were taken before the search was executed.
Yes.
So for lack of a better term, this is the natural state of the home you found in November the 30th.
Correct.
So what are we looking at here in this photograph, exhibit 164?
Yeah, so I was made aware this was the shooter's bedroom. The bed was covered with various things. There's school books on it. There was targets visible on the wall that had apparently bullet holes in them.
Okay, I'm gonna do another angle here. This is 165, the same bedroom.
Correct.
So what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so the shooter had a dresser, it looked like TV. There was things all over the floor. There was things all over the place, really.
Okay, so that boarded up window in the back, that it was adjacent to the master bedroom, right?
Correct.
Okay, and so the picture that we just looked at with the targets on the wall, that would be if you were taking this picture behind you.
Yes.
Okay. Were you able to tell why that window was boarded up?
Yeah, you know what, I don't know why that was boarded up, I was never made aware why that was boarded up.
And that led to the master bedroom, correct?
I would believe so, yeah, that leads to the master bedroom.
So this is one,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I would have no objection for the prosecutor to just say why that's worded like that, just so it's clear for the jury, so I don't have to go back to it. We don't
I
have
don't know
to.
if he knows, you know.
I asked, is that what's
You
okay?
know? You don't know.
Yeah,
That's not our question.
Yeah.
I'm
He
just
doesn't
saying
know.
that he could, Mr. Keys could say it if he wanted to.
Okay, he doesn't, the witness doesn't know those.
Okay,
So, okay, this is 166, this is the same bedroom?
Correct.
Okay, just a different angle?
Yes,
And 167 is also the same bedroom, but better angle?
Yep.
Okay. This was identified as one of the shooter's bedrooms.
correct,
168, same bedroom?
correct,
And 169, this is the same bedroom as well, it's the closet in that room?
yes,
And this is 171, just a different angle from that closet?
correct.
Okay, 172, are these the targets that we saw initially in exhibit 164?
Yes,
Okay, and have these targets been used or unused?
yeah, they appear to be used.
Okay. That's 172. 173, this is just further down the wall with one of the two targets.
Yes,
This is 174, this is another picture, this is of the shooter's bed.
Yep.
Again, 175, same bedroom.
Correct.
Now this is 176. This is the nightstand in that room, would that be right?
correct,
And 177, so you had talked about that the shooter was identified at two bedrooms.
Yeah.
Okay, is this the second of the two bedrooms?
yep, so that was the bedroom on the right side of the hallway, just across from the bedroom you're just looking at.
Okay, so again, this photograph was taken before the search warrant was actually executed.
Correct.
That's 177. This is 178, this is the same bedroom.
Yes,
179, this is the closet of that bedroom.
yes,
This is 183, this is on the bed of that bedroom, that'd be right.
correct,
Okay, 184, same bedroom, different angle.
Correct.
185, same bedroom, TV in that room.
correct,
That's right, this is 186, again, same room.
yes.
This is 188, there was one bathroom in the home.
Yep, that was, when you walk in that hallway, bedroom to the right, the bathroom is straight ahead, and the other bedroom's to the left.
Okay, this photograph fairly accurately depicts the condition of the bathroom on November 30th.
It does.
It's 188. Okay, this is 189. Sir, what are we looking at in this photograph?
Yeah, so when you walk out of that hallway, you go down another hallway, and there was what was described to me as a master bedroom. When you walked in, that was the bed that was in the bedroom, and there was an open gun box with an empty box of 9mm ammunition on the bed.
Okay. Now, is this the condition that this gun case and empty box of ammunition were found on November the 30th, 2021?
Correct.
And that's on the master bedroom?
Yes, yes,
This is exhibit 191. This is the same master bedroom. And then this is the nightstand.
correct,
This is 192, the same room.
yes,
Again, 193, this is also the same room.
correct.
And 194, what are we looking at here?
So when you walk into the bedroom, immediately to the right of the door.
The master
was-
bedroom?
Yeah, the master
Okay.
bedroom was an armoire.
Okay. 195, this is the same armoire with a slightly different perception.
Correct.
196, is this still the room?
Yep, so that would be the door that would lead out to the backyard, and then a TV stand with various drawers and things in it.
Okay. And were these drawers eventually searched?
They were,
197, same TV stand?
Correct.
198, it's the same room, just a different angle?
Yep.
199, again, same master bedroom?
correct,
Okay, this is exhibit 200. So we're clear, moving back to exhibit 197. These drawers were searched?
correct.
Okay, were you actually directed where to go to?
I was.
Okay, who directed you?
James Crumbley.
Okay, and so specific to the, if we're looking at this photograph, the right drawer, I'm sorry, not drawer, you tell me, which area did you find what was located here in exhibit 200?
Yeah, so when you're looking at that picture, to the right door there, you open that up, and there was two shelves on it, and the gun safe was on the top shelf.
And who told you where to look for that?
James Crumbley did.
Okay, and that's already been admitted into evidence, and that has a locking mechanism on it?
It does.
Okay, were you told what the combination is?
I was.
Objection, Your Honor, just irrelevant to Jennifer's case, unless the information came from her.
Okay, well,
What James would say is hearsay to this officer, so I would object for that reason.
isn't it?
Judge, it's relevant because the firearm was found in the defendant's home, a shared home,
Okay,
and
but
shows how the officer opened the case and recovered other weapons in the truck.
Your Honor,
okay,
the
what he
objection,
said is hearsay. So you had a conversation with James Crumbley.
Yeah.
And then you found that case and opened it.
And Judge, I'm sorry, she also testified, or she also said in her statement to the officer yesterday, Joe Ryan, in the interview that was admitted as evidence, that she knew where the firearm was found. And later
No,
on today,
Your Honor, she did not say that.
like,
She did not say that in the video, or she did not talk about these firearms.
Sergeant Pesky is going to testify later on today. We're going to admit an in-car video with Jennifer's recordings will be admitted as an exhibit. She's asked specifically about this.
And Your Honor, I would ask that the jury wait until then, because I disagree with the prosecution's description of what that evidence will show.
Okay, but he already testified they had a conversation with James Crumbley and they went to this location and that he then opened that safe.
Yes.
Isn't that sufficient?
That's, well, how did he open the safe is important. You think, did you have to crack open the safe?
I did not.
Okay, so you were given the code to open the safe.
Correct.
Okay, and were things recovered from that safe?
Yes,
Okay, so without having to crack open the safe to recover the items, you learned how to open it.
I did.
Okay, and then how did you open the safe?
Your Honor, I object to him saying what the code was, because Jennifer Knowledge has no awareness of the code, and that's what the prosecution is hoping to slip in here as hearsay that James told this officer.
He said he had a conversation with James and then he opened the safe. He didn't say that Jennifer gave him the code,
Okay,
right?
yeah, true.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so you talked to James Crumbley and he gave you the code for the safe.
he did,
Okay, and tell us how you got in the safe.
by using the code that he gave me.
And what was it?
It was 000.
Okay, and that's the default code for that case.
Correct.
All right. Exhibit 200. Okay. Now this is 201. We're looking at the same drawer here. I keep calling it a drawer. It's better called a shelf, right?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
more of a shell.
Okay. So we have this case that's been admitted in evidence, and then it looks like an article of clothing, and then underneath that, what did you find?
That was a holster, which is on the right there, and then 2 magazines, and there was a baggie of bullets in the back. I can't really see it there.
Okay. And this is 202. All right. You see 2 magazines and a baggie of bullets. That wasn't on the shelf when you walked into the bedroom, right? So that's what you pulled out of there.
Yeah, so that was, at that point, it had been removed from the shelf, and it was placed into the bag, and the magazine was placed on the top of the TV stand there.
So this is 203. Again, this is the locking case. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So tell us what was found in the locking case.
So I located a 22 Kel-Tec handgun and then a 22 Derringer. The Kel-Tec's the black handgun and the Derringer is the silver handgun with the brown handle on it. And some ear protection.
So this is what it appeared. This is what it looked like when you opened the case initially.
Yes,
Here's 204. What is this?
that's the 22 Derringer.
It's just a closer ring. We already have that in there. 205 is the same firearm, just from a different angle.
Correct.
Okay, 210. What are we looking at?
That's the 22 Kel-Tec that was recovered from the safe.
211 is the close-up view of the Derringer.
Correct.
Okay, 212. We're going back to one of the shooter's bedrooms. We saw the Packers helmet in a different photograph. Is this a close-up view of the nightstand?
Correct.
Okay, and what are we looking at here?
Those would be spent shell casings from fired from a weapon.
Okay, and that's the condition in which you observed it on November the 30th, 2021?
Correct.
So is that 212 or 213?
That's 212, so we just have a 213 is slightly similar picture. All right, 216. This isn't a real firearm, is it?
No, it was I believe it was a BB or a pellet. It wasn't a,
But that's where it was found in the shooter's bedroom on November the 30th, 2021.
yeah, on the computer chair in the shooter's bedroom.
217, just a slightly different picture. 218. What are we looking at here?
That would be a drawer from the dresser in one of the shooter's bedrooms.
219, same drawer.
Correct.
And 220. What's this?
Empty bottle of whiskey next to one of the shooter's beds.
Okay. Now, judging by the wall color, would that be the same bedroom that the targets were found?
Correct.
Right. Here's 221. This is the same bottle of whiskey, correct? Or empty
Yeah,
bottle?
just at the end of the bed, just sitting on the floor.
Okay. 222. What is this?
That was a notebook that was recovered from I believe one of the drawers in the bedroom, from the drawers in the bedroom.
223. What is this?
There were various knives that were found in the bedroom.
Okay. Where were they found?
I believe right on, I think that's on the one of the shelving units in the room.
Okay, so one of the earlier pictures saw shelving, wall shelving unit. Would this be a close-up view of that?
Correct.
Okay. This is 231. Now, what's this a picture of?
Yes, this would be when that door would be the front door. If you're exiting the residence, when you're coming into the residence, to your immediate right was the couch. That TV was on the wall, which was facing the front of the house. So that was a view of the living room.
Okay, so the door that we see on the right-hand side, that's the front entrance door.
Correct.
Okay, so this is what you would when you walk into the house, this is what you walk into.
Yes,
It's 231. This is 232. What's this?
same thing. When you immediately walk into the house, that's what you observe. That's the living room area, the couches, the TV would be just in front of that.
233.
Same thing, just a different view. So this angle would show that hallway, which is observed straight ahead would lead directly into the kitchen.
234. This is also living room.
Yeah, it's a TV stand.
Okay, 235. What are we looking at here?
So that's the kitchen had an island. Underneath the island, there was various drawers that you could open up or shelving units and stuff. That was a box for the 22 Caltech that was recovered in the master bedroom.
Okay, and that's an evidence as well. 236 is just a different angle view of where that Caltech box was found.
Correct.
Okay, was the Caltech box open?
It was.
Okay, what was found in there?
When I opened the Caltech box, it was a secured cable lock for a firearm. It was in the packaging still.
So 237 is just the side view of that Caltech box you found?
Correct.
And 238, you said it was still in the packaging. Is this how it was found?
That's how it was.
Okay, there's no keys in that locking mechanism, is that right?
Yeah, there was the keys were at the end there, towards the bottom of the lock.
Like where it looks like a black box there?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's also evidence. That's 238. 239, what's this a picture of?
I believe that's a PlayStation unit or a gaming system that was recovered from the residence.
So then, things from the Crumbley home, such as video games for seats as well?
Correct.
Gaming system, okay. So here's 242 with some of those.
Correct.
243 with more.
Correct.
And 244 as well.
Correct.
Okay, were the vehicles searched as well?
They were.
Okay, what are we looking at here?
That was the back of, I believe that was the gray Kia that was searched in the driveway.
Okay, it's 245. 246, this is the same vehicle, just different angle of that hatchback.
Correct.
This is 248. Okay, so there's no garage in this home, is that right?
No, there was a behind the home or adjacent to the home, it was more like a shed that was behind the house.
Okay. Was there like an overhang type area where a barbecue grill is at?
Yeah.
Okay, so 248, does that depict that?
Yeah, correct.
And what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so those would be BBs for a BB gun.
Which one are we looking at?
It's like a plastic container,
Okay.
and it looks like there's more in the should be the original plastic container. Some nails. I'm not sure what it looks like. That's probably something used to clean the grill next to it.
Okay. So this is now going to be 253. You said there was a shed?
Correct.
Okay, and so the shed was searched as well?
It was.
Okay, so what are we looking at here in exhibit 253?
So that'd be immediately we walk into the shed to the right. There was multiple shotgun style BB guns located.
Okay, 253 depicts one of those?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, here's 254. What is that?
Yeah, same thing. So that was when you walk in, there was in the shed, there was like a tool bench. On the tool bench, visible as another like Uzi style BB gun that was visible on the bench right when you walked in.
Okay. 255, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, same thing. It was another, I believe it was a BB or pellet gun that was also located kind of behind the original picture where the Uzi style gun was, or BB gun was.
256, tell us about this picture.
So that would be when you walk into the shed. It was there were some chairs on the ground. You can see behind it where like the shelving unit is. Yeah, just some chairs where it looks like somebody was sitting in the shed.
Okay. 268, tell us what we're looking at.
Kind of hard to tell, but you can see the silver in the snow there. It was empty CO2 cartridges.
Were there just one empty CO2 cartridge or multiple?
I believe there's multiple. You can see, it's kind of hard to see, but there's multiple in the snow there.
There's 269, that's a better view.
Yeah, there's multiple in the snow.
You know what those are used for?
Yeah, for the BB guns and the pellet guns at the inside of the shed.
Okay, now, the second search warrant was executed at 112 East, is that true?
Correct.
Okay, so this is, obviously, what we were looking at before, it was at night, that was the evening of November the 30th, 2021. This is the daytime, so anytime you see daylight, that would be the second search warrant. Right? Is this the front of the house, exhibit 272?
Yep, correct. That would be the front of the house facing East Street.
Okay. This is 278. This is when you walk into the home, oriented to the left.
Yes, you walk in to the right of this picture would be where we saw the couches and the TV. This would be to the left. You can see the dining room area, and then kind of straight through that picture would be directly into the kitchen.
Okay. In those boxes, they weren't in the home November the 30th, 2021. Do you know if they were left on the porch or do you not know?
I'm not aware of those.
Okay.
In the house.
So here's 279. Is this standing as you walk in, turn to the left?
Yeah, so you walk into the left, and that was kind of like the dining room area with the table and the various Christmas decorations.
Okay. This is 280. What are we looking at here?
Yep, so that would be if you'd be walking through living room with the couches on your right, dining room on the left, and then straight ahead, the kitchen, and where you can see the open door at the very end of the hallway. That's the master bedroom.
Okay, so earlier you testified that the Caltech box was in the kitchen island. Do you see the kitchen island in this picture?
Correct.
Where is it at?
So you can see it with the, it's got like the white board on the white board with the top. It looks like there's a binder. The black binder would be the top of the kitchen island.
Okay, so here's 281. Is that the kitchen island we're referring to?
Correct.
Now this is also the kitchen, 282.
Correct.
283, the kitchen as well. This is the refrigerator.
Correct.
284, this is the island as well.
Yeah, so those two open, at the bottom of the island, you can see the two doors. That's where at the bottom of that was a open area where the Caltech gun box was recovered from.
Okay, so on the bottom right of the screen?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. 285, this is also the kitchen?
Correct.
Okay, so the last picture was orange to the left, this will be orange to the right.
Correct. Yeah, on the outside of that would be where the driveway was, the side of the house.
286, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so when you were in the kitchen, I kind of described it earlier, you take the right, there's a small hallway. At the end of the hallway was that bathroom. To the right was one of the shooter's bedrooms, and immediately across the hallway to the left is the second bedroom.
287, what do we see here?
Yep, so that'd be the first bedroom to the right. It has a bigger bed than from the earlier pictures.
288. Now, this is after the initial search was executed.
Yeah, this was done the next day, different, after the home had already been searched by detectives.
289, this would be identified as a shooter's second bedroom.
Correct.
290, same bedroom, different view.
Correct.
What do we see to the left of the bed there, shooter's bedroom?
Are we referring to the stand kind of to the left of the bed?
On the ground.
Looks like a Gatorade bottle.
Was there a litter box on the ground?
Yeah, a litter box, yeah.
That's 290. 291, this is the same bedroom, now looking towards the closet and the door.
Correct.
There's 293, this is down the hall looking at his, what we refer to as first bedroom.
Yeah, just directly across the hall was the first bedroom.
Okay, 296 is the room with the boarded window.
Correct.
From the hallway.
Correct.
297, again, this is after the initial search warrant was executed.
Correct.
300, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so this would be if you were standing directly in the kitchen, you look down, there was a small hallway, narrow hallway with a washing machine, drying machine on your left, which you can see. And then walking straight ahead is to the entrance to the master bedroom and the sliding glass door that leads to the backyard.
In 301, you identified earlier the washer dryer unit, is this what you're referring to?
Correct.
302, what's this?
Yeah, so when you were walking from the original picture, you saw the washer and dryer. To the left of the washer, and prior to getting to the washer and dryer to the left was a small little hallway that was filled with various items. And that was, what you're looking at right there is kind of like the landing leading to the basement.
Okay. We just have a few more to get through. 303, what are we looking at here?
That's the entrance to the master bedroom.
To the master bedroom, correct. 304, this is taken in the master bedroom. So the TV stand is to the left of this picture,
Correct.
and that's where the Caltech and Derringer were found.
If you're looking at that TV there, it was in one of the open doors. You can kind of see that door open. On the right side of that was where the safe was found with the weapons in it.
Okay. 305, this is also the master bedroom.
Correct. As we came into the right, it was I believe it was a king size bed and then a couple end tables next to that.
And here's 306, what are we looking at here?
Similar view, to the right was that armoire, which you would see when you walk into your immediate right when you came into the bedroom. Just a different angle of the bed with the armoire.
And here's 307.
So if you were kind of sitting on the bed, you'd be looking at the TV with the TV stand. The door in the bottom right there that's semi-ajar was where the safe was.
Okay.
with the weapons in it.
And here's 308, what are we looking at?
So 308 would be what I referred to. I believe that's to the landing area that leads to the basement.
Okay,
It's a
here's
different
309.
It's a landing area that leads to the basement.
Here's 316. So we had already looked at a picture of the barbecue grill. You identified that there was no garage but a shed. Where would be the shed in this area here?
Yeah, so this would be where that door of the landing was. You walk out and there was this little area with an overhang with a grill that's visible there. If you were to walk straight past that grill into the yard there to your left would be the shed.
And here's that 317. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, it's just more of the overhang area there. Kind of adjacent to the side of the house. On November the 30th, when you first entered the home to secure the home for the search warrant, were you aware if the stove was on or off? Yeah, I don't know.
That's our other officer here. Nothing further, thank you.
Cross?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Initially, when you got to the house, you said other officers had already arrived there, correct?
Correct.
What was happening with Jennifer the first time you saw her?
She was being hailed out of the house by another detective. By hailed, I mean being told to come out of the house.
And at the time, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she complied and came out.
She complied and came out. At the time when she was coming out of the house, being hailed out, she was on her cell phone. Is that fair?
You know, so when I got there, I don't recall exactly what she was doing when she came out of the house. I just got there as she was walking out of the house. I don't recall if she was on her cell phone.
While she was walking out of the house, there were guns drawn. There were guns drawn, correct?
Correct.
How many police officers had guns drawn towards Jennifer Crumbley as she walked out of the house?
I couldn't say for certain. When I got there, she was already being told to come out of the house. So at the time, I wasn't really focused on who had the guns out. I was focused on watching the house and making sure nobody else came out. So I couldn't say how many people had their weapons drawn.
Would it be fair to say it was more than one gun?
Yeah, correct.
More than three?
Yeah, there was multiple detectives and officers there when I got there. Again, I don't know how many of them had their guns drawn. I know that I had my gun drawn.
You did have yours drawn?
Correct.
And pointed at Mrs. Crumbley?
No, so when I got there, she was already coming out of the house. I was, like I said, I was more focused on, I believe I was near a tree on the side of the house. So at that time, I don't think I had my gun pointed at her.
After Mrs. Crumbley came out of the house, and she did come out, correct?
Correct.
She was handcuffed.
So I didn't take part in her being taken to the vehicle. So I'm not sure if she was handcuffed.
And that's fine. I'll ask a different witness then. So after you got to the house, you saw her come out, saw the guns drawn. Did you see Jennifer Crumbley any further that day when you were in the house or otherwise?
After we had executed the search warrant, she was brought back into the house with James, and I saw her inside the house. I didn't have further communication with her, no.
I just want to be clear about the guns and gun cases, boxes, some of the things we saw on the screen. If you need me to put an exhibit back up, let me know.
Okay.
Okay, so the Sig Sauer 9mm gun, the case for that gun, you saw in the master bedroom, open on the bed, correct?
Correct.
And there was a box of bullets, or an empty box of bullets next to that empty case, correct?
Correct.
In that case, the gun was not there.
Nope. When I initially came to the house and then we conducted the search warrant, it was an empty box.
And you know, and if you're not the right witness, let me know, that James Crumbley had gone to the house and discovered the Sig Sauer was gone from the house.
And so when I went to the house, I had no knowledge of anything that had occurred prior to me getting to the house. Like I said, I just observed the box where I saw it initially when I did the search, and then after, I don't know how it was placed there or when it was.
So when you were, I just want to be clear, the Sig Sauer was ultimately not in the Crumbley home.
Correct.
The Kel-Tec and the Derringer were found in the Crumbley home. Is that yes? They were found in a gun safe.
Correct.
And they were found in the gun safe that was in the cabinet in their bedroom.
Correct.
And there was not ammunition stored with the Kel-Tec or Derringer.
Yeah, so the safe, which we saw the pictures of, had the two firearms and some ear protection. There was ammunition found in that same dresser area behind it.
Okay, but not in the same, not within the exact location of the safe, correct?